Made it all the way to Friday. The question is, will the Indiana Hoosiers make it all the way to the NCAA tournament? They lose to Oregon yesterday. Did not get help elsewhere. Purdue squeaks one out against USC last night. We got a lot to talk about today. And, JB, I'm going to start with you because you spent most of your afternoon over at West 56.
Yeah.
I was going to go to the game with you, but you had to go to work, I guess.
Yeah.
So you waited and waited and waited and finally got to talk to who?
Daniel Jones was the last guy to speak yesterday. We spoke to 4 players who re-signed or signed with the Colts in free agency. First was Danny Pinter, the Ball State product, Ashton Doolin, the special teams ace, and then came Javarius Ward, who was very candid about what he went through last year. We'll get into that as well. And then lastly, Indiana Jones, Daniel Jones, speaking to us for the first time as a member of the Colts. And so longer day than I maybe expected. We had the IU game on in the back, and so maybe towards the end there, I got a little relief because it was rough. But still a pretty informative day, I would say. We'll get into what Daniel Jones said, what it means for the Colts, and other things like that. But first time back at West 56th Street in a minute, and I think it's, just a reminder that the draft is coming up and the season's kind of trickling, getting closer.
All right, we'll talk more about that. Of course, Kevin Bowen covers the Colts as well. But yesterday he was off just shaping the minds of America's youth down in Bloomington. What's it like? Tell me you let them watch the game during your class yesterday as you were teaching simultaneous to the Hoosiers playing over at Gamebridge.
Indeed, I don't think I can share the words that many students shared as that Oregon lead built there to close out the game. Yeah, Indiana's going to be sweating it. They'll be sweating it, certainly. I thought a mixed bag bubble-wise for them yesterday. Obviously, Texas winning, for example, didn't help them. But there were some teams, Xavier in particular, that did lose. Right now, Joe Lunardi's got him first team out. And if you look at the bid stealing around college basketball, it doesn't look like the Big East, for example, will be a bid stealing conference. It doesn't look like the ACC. North Carolina is already above Indiana based off Joe Lunardi. So, you aren't going to get some of these weird big conferences with bid stealing. I still think you watch like the American, Memphis, for example, the A10, somebody other than VCU winning the conference. But nonetheless, it is insert your sweat gifts here for Indiana. And I thought if their season and the Mike Woodson era ended yesterday, I thought very fitting. Just a microcosm of the entire era, the inability to shoot, the inability to respond to any runs. And in your biggest game of the season, you have a season low in points.
And Kevin, I had a chance to go to that game yesterday, and I was pleasantly surprised. It was nice. At the very beginning of the game when they did player introductions and coach introductions, Mike Woodson got a really nice round of applause. And I think Indiana fans are in their not happy place, but I think they're okay with the fact that he's a Hoosier legend. It hasn't worked out to this point in time as head coach. They went on a nice little run here at the end of the season, and maybe they get into the NCAA tournament, maybe they don't, but he is going to step down. And so I think just more evidence that generally they're happy with that decision, but I thought it was nice that he got a nice round of applause from everybody.
Yeah,
yesterday.
I'd say happy that he's gone would be an understatement from Indiana Nation. So
I mean, it was warm. It was warm though. If you're there, it was a warm round of applause for him. It wasn't like sarcastic. It was
happy
nice.
that he's exiting stage right as quickly as possible, I think is how I
You're
would.
harsh.
So do you think it's over? They don't make the tournament? Or
I mean, again, I know Joe Lunardi's not gospel. I bring him up because he's the ESPN bracketologist, and I think that resonates with our audience probably the easiest. He's got him out. I mean, James will have one of your colleagues on today from a bracketology standpoint. I think they have a very confusing resume. It's like their best strength of their resume is no bad losses. How high does the committee view that? Like, is that a big metric? Like, no bad losses? They're also 2-10 against tournament teams.
yeah,
That to
That's
me
the hard part.
is a really jarring statistic as well. There are a couple of games of rooting interest. For example, Lunardi has, I think, 3 teams directly behind them that are still alive in their conference tournament. So cheer against Boise State today if you're an IU fan. Cheer against Colorado State. Cheer against Dayton, ironically enough, as you could go to Dayton. So we'll get more to this throughout the show. And again, have a bracketologist join us a little bit later. If you did not stay up, Purdue fans, I would say you got a very favorable whistle in the last 30 to 40 seconds of that game. And survive and advance indeed happened. So all of the top 8 seeds in the Big Ten advanced to the quarterfinal. Trey Kaufman-Renn was exceptional. A major credit to Matt Painter. I see 98% of college coaches self-ban players with 2 fouls. They just ban him to the bench. They send him to the corner like I sent Max Bowen yesterday when he bit his cousin Carter in the corner. And I said, Max, you were there for 2 minutes. Matt Painter did not do that
box.
for Trey Kaufman-Renn. He put him back in the lineup. That was important for Purdue to get back in the game. And I think Purdue fans would admit it. I think Matt Painter admitted it afterwards. I think Braden Smith admitted it afterwards. Purdue got a very nice whistle in the final 30 seconds of that game.
I could see where the referees thought that there was just a slip on the floor because I don't know if you noticed right afterwards, Braden Smith fell down in almost the exact same spot. And they were even talking about it on the broadcast. I don't know if there was something wet on the floor at that point in time, but did look like there was a little bit of contact as he was going down too.
Well, and honestly, if I were a USC fan, I'd be irate about the Trey Kaufman-Renn going to the foul line to 3 on the shot clock. That was an inbounds pass that you don't call that with 39 minutes to go in the game. Like a physical Big Ten game. I just didn't see anything there that would have led to Kaufman-Renn going to the foul line.
To piggyback off that, I go back to, not that I play at a high level, but when you're playing with your friends or you're hooping, you don't call that. Like, if you call that in an open gym, everyone in there is going to boo you and call you ridiculous. And I don't even think Trey Kaufman-Renn necessarily was looking for a foul. I mean,
no one from Purdue reacted in a manner that, like, oh, this should have been a foul.
Yeah, it was kind of like, all right, we'll take it. And obviously, I think I tweeted this last night. You're never going to apologize for how you win in whatever fashion because it's hard to win. But there certainly were a couple favorable calls down there. But at the end of the day, I also think that USC relied so much on Desmond Claude towards the end where it's like you needed one more player with him to kind of really give you a chance. And it was like he almost had to be perfect. He nearly was.
And he got a great look.
I mean, he got a fantastic
probably
look.
Forced in overtime.
But I think everyone, and Trey Kaufman-Renn said it after on the broadcast, he's like, we got to play better than this. We're happy, but we got to play a lot better than this, and I think they probably will because that kind of scared him and woke him up.
I thought their wings were great. I thought Heidi and Colvin were outstanding.
How about that strip, Heidi?
Yeah,
Heidi was
huge
terrific
play
down the
there
stretch.
late. So very important for Purdue. They kind of went back to the early lineup that we saw this season. Those two with the big three. I thought Fletcher Lawyer hit some big shots throughout the game to kind of keep Purdue hanging around there. So again, Purdue will be in the late one tonight. They are a favorite over Michigan. So despite the seeds indicating otherwise, Purdue a 3.5-point favorite over Michigan. Again, that'll be the final game over at Gamebridge Fieldhouse tonight.
Well, we're looking forward to watching a lot of basketball. I might make my way up to Frankfurt. 4-8 tonight. Fisher's taking on Harrison.
Tomorrow
night. And
gonna camp out.
Yeah. And also,
tailgate with the Tigers.
Here's the other thing. Either that or maybe even Lebanon. Maybe I don't want to go all the way to Frankfurt. Maybe I'll just stop at Lebanon and go see Crispus Attucks taking on Northview. There's some good basketball this weekend.
I mean,
James.
I think I'm probably going to Southport, see Luke Ertl play again.
That's
just
Brownsburg
because
and Mount Vernon?
Yeah, I've jumped on the bandwagon at this point. I want to see the kid play. He can really hoop. But I don't blame you, Jeff. This is Greg Rakestraw, Kyle Neddenrep. I see both of them more often than I see my family this time of the year because every weekend I'm in a gym and I see those two. Whenever I see one of those two, I know it's going to be a great day.
We will speak with the great Greg Rakestraw coming up here 8 o'clock today. Again, we'll have a bracketologist on a little bit later. The Pacers are a rare double-digit road favorite tonight. That shows you where the Philadelphia 76ers are at. I think us four plus Scotty could maybe hang in there for a quarter or two with the Sixers.
Scotty's going for 22 in that game.
Great wing shooter. Don't leave him open. Great opportunity for the Pacers tonight. Halliburton not on the injury report. So does that mean he plays?
You'd think so?
Yeah, absolutely.
So he'll play in this back-to-back?
Yes.
Well, it sounds like.
I believe that's how it goes. I don't know. If I remember correctly, covering the NBA,
if you're off it,
yeah, you have to
play.
be available. If you're not on it, then you're probably going to get fined or
Didn't
something
somebody
like
just
that.
get fined this week for something like that?
Yeah, I forget which team it was, but and it's a hefty fine. I want to say it was actually the Jazz, and it was like maybe it was like 100K.
Yeah.
For not like doing the
unnecessarily sitting a player is what they called it.
So Milwaukee tomorrow night, of course, for the Pacers here. And again, I mentioned this to Scott Agnes when he joined us, and I get it, guys. When Halliburton has the shot that he had, everything else that happens in the game gets swept under the rug. But we probably should have spent more time on Giannis not scoring in the fourth quarter the other night.
Yeah, that was crazy.
And like, what will he do in response to that? That was a huge part of that game. I know he had the big assist to Gary Trent Jr. there late in the game, but still, that is not something that we probably talked about enough. For what it's worth, the Bucks did when they beat the Lakers last night by 20. Luka had a million, but Milwaukee was able to get it done at home last night.
Pistons did lose, though. So
they
a little bit of breathing on that
horrific
side.
Wizards.
Yeah, 129 at home. They lost to the Wizards at home. 129, 125. We'll tell you all about it coming up in a moment. We'll have the morning check down. Again, bracketology a little bit later on today. Greg Rakestraw is going to stop by. Busy weekend in boys high school basketball. And just a terrific cadre of signings rolling through West 56 that we'll talk about there as well. It's the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
After arguably their worst offensive effort of the year, the Indiana Hoosiers now will sweat it out. Mike Woodson was trying to vouch for his squad afterwards, and his pitch to the NCAA Tournament Committee sounded like this.
I think we're playing some of our best basketball tonight or this afternoon wasn't an indication of how we've been playing. We've been very competitive, even in the games that we've lost. I go back to the Maryland game at home, the UCLA game, the Michigan game at home. They were all competitive, 1 or 2 possession games. Beating Purdue, had a shot to beat Purdue at their spot. So we've had a lot of close games that we just weren't able to make the play here or there. But these last 2 weeks, I think we've been playing some pretty damn good basketball. And again, I got to give Oregon a lot of credit because, again, they played well today.
Is it enough, boys? That sounded like a lot of close losses in describing that resume. Don't know how high the committee views that.
I don't think it doesn't sound like I was listening to 3 or 4 different guys, and I want to articulate this correctly. Last night, bracketologists, people who study these things, they just need a lot of help. And I don't know if there's enough help out there at this point in time to get them back into where they need to be.
So here's a poll for you, KB. You'll know what I'm talking about. This sounds like Dan Orlovsky, and he was tweeting about Jeff Saturday. And he had like the 5 first quarter leads. Mm-hmm. We don't care.
I'm shivering over here.
Yeah, like the end is what matters. So you don't want to necessarily bring up the losses.
Oh, man.
You don't want to bring up the losses in your pitch I would just, hammer the wins, hammer the big moments. I wouldn't be talking about, well, we were close. Like, nah, being close to getting into the NCAA tournament is still not getting in. So I don't know. It's tough.
I sent out a tweet on our Twitter page, and I don't even think IU fans want them in because I said, are the Hoosiers making the NCAA tournament? 76% said no, and other people are like, just give us a mercy killing. Just end it. We want to be done. Don't do it to us.
I would
don't
say
drag this out.
To live in the moment, I was just so thoroughly disappointed in yesterday's effort. I mean, season low in points. It just stuns me that the state school from Indiana is shooting 35% from the floor, 25% from 3, and 50% from the foul line. The Leo backbreaking 1-and-1s yesterday, missing the front end on both of those. Boy, that's just that was a jarring, if indeed it is the final game of the season. Pretty jarring. Certainly will not be the final game for the Purdue Boilermakers. 76-71. They pull ahead in the final 30 seconds. Trey Kaufman-Wren, outstanding. 30 points for him. He battled some foul trouble in the first half. Matt Painter stuck with him in the lineup there. That was key to get Purdue back in it. James Boyd, I thought Cam Heide and Miles Colvin were terrific as well.
Yeah, like I said, late, Cam Heide, quick hands, and got the strip that really mattered the most. And obviously, Miles, I think he's had some moments this year. He's made some big shots and had some key plays. And so that, to me, is a recipe for them to go on a run. Now, obviously, I think they have to play a lot better than last night and not stress Matt Painter out that much. I thought he'd lose all his hair by the end of the game. But you survive in advance. And sometimes, I mean, the signs to me of a good team is can you win without your best stuff? And they were able to pull it out against a U.S. team that was tough. And Desmond Claude, I was like, man, if this guy pulls this off, we're going to see him in our nightmares after this.
One-man game.
He tried to walk him down, but obviously, got a couple favorable calls late. And then ultimately, I do think that Purdue was just a better team, more balanced team, and they pulled out the win.
A couple of things, Kev. Career highs in points and rebounds. Tied a career high in rebounds for Trey Kaufman-Wren, 30 points, 8 rebounds. But you just got to love Braden Smith. There were a couple of times they needed a bucket last night with about 3.5 minutes to go. You see how quick he accelerates down the lane to get past everybody and get that shot up and in?
Yeah, he smoked one. Like
big time.
He missed one layup right at the rim, and I was like,
right
oh, my God.
He came right back.
Exactly. So credit to him.
Yeah.
Again, Colvin and Heide combined off the bench. I thought they were key in a rebound effort because these types of teams have given Purdue trouble, and I think those two are important to kind of ride at times. 17 points, 16 rebounds combined for them. Butler's season ends in the fashion you probably thought it would end, although they were competitive with St. John's in the regular season. They were not in that class whatsoever yesterday. Pacers are a double-digit road favorite tonight. The 76ers are without everybody you would think is on the 76ers roster. Again, back-to-back Pacers and Bucks coming up tomorrow nights, and certainly I would say one of the more headline and again, jarring and tragic news items from yesterday, the passing of John Feinstein. When you think about Just great sports writers. Certainly resonated in our state from Season on the Brink. I feel like Season on the Brink is right up there like with the Bible in terms of what people read in this state. Mark, we had him on a couple years ago.
Yep.
And
He had the Back Roads to March.
Right.
March Madness.
One of his latest books.
I have that copy in my office. I took a picture of it this morning.
I really just enjoyed the combo with him. As I think our audience knows, I'm a huge golf fan. He did some terrific work on a variety of golf, not only books, but broadcasts as well. One of my favorite books, also The Last Amateurs, talking about the Patriot League. So rest in peace to John Feinstein. I was pretty stunned by that headline yesterday. 68 years old.
Had the opportunity. He and I worked together for a couple years on weekends over at SiriusXM and got a chance to know him just a little bit. A giving, kind guy, but very firm in his opinions and thoughts because he was so researched and he had spent so much time embedded with people and really getting to know not just the people, but the situations behind all the things that we see on TV. And all those books you mentioned, and a fantastic one also. And you want to know anything about Army-Navy, that was his real passion. That Army-Navy football game.
Attender of that. I
just
thought he was
too young, way too
as
young.
great of a writer as he was. I thought he was really good, whether it was radio, whether it was TV. Did a lot of stuff at the Golf Channel late in his career as well. I thought he was very good in other outlets. So
he was just
rest in
terrific all
peace.
the way around, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's as the young reporter who wants to do multiple things and you see somebody do it that well, you're like, wow, that's the standard. So obviously, I think the reflection of the impact you had on people is always kind of poured out by what you leave behind. And so you have a ton of people reaching out and saying things. They're not forced to say these things. They're not forced to, share personal stories. And so I thought it was kind of fitting also that I believe the day before he passed, he filed a column about Tom Izzo and, what's going on in Michigan State. And so that's kind of fitting in for him.
Reminder, speaking of Tom Izzo, our Big Ten schedule for today will begin with Coach Izzo taking on Oregon. Two great coaches in that matchup, Tom Izzo and Dana Altman at noon. You'll get Wisconsin and UCLA in the 4-5 matchup. And again, all top 8 seeds advance. The nightcap will be James's Fighting Illini. Most points ever in a Big Ten tourney game.
Yeah.
Illinois and Iowa yesterday. Fran McCaffrey, does that exit stage left? Is that for good? Is Iowa's job open? Does that mean Indiana and Iowa pursuing the same person? I saw Jeff Goodman had some interesting thoughts on Ben McCollum of Drake yesterday.
I like the fact that I think they want to go a little bit younger, at least somebody right in their prime, right?
Yeah, this is how I look at it because I saw it with Jim Boeheim at Syracuse. Like, you probably want to leave before it just gets derailed. And sometimes the great ones, whether it's a coach or a player, the end is never pretty. And I'm like, if you can find like some respectable end to it and kind of swallow your pride a little bit, maybe. But also at the same time, I'm like, if you still feel that fire and you want to do it, who am I to tell you no? But it just feels like they need a new flavor there. And again, he's been a great coach there, been there for a long time. You don't want to maybe taint the end because you're kind of stuck just in the mud a little bit.
So that's Illinois, Maryland at 6:30, and then again Purdue and Michigan will round out the night there. Purdue a favorite, it's 3.5-point favorite over Dusty May and company. Obviously, those two teams split in the regular season. All right, on the other side, Chris Ballard's actions continue to match the words. He's added competition at quite the interesting spots, and if you listen to Charvarius, Mooney Ward, and Daniel Jones yesterday, you probably walked away thinking, boy, I'd like to hang out with one, and I'd rather talk to the wall, frankly, for the other one. We'll hit on that and IU's bubble reaction all on the other side. This is the Fan Morning Show on a Friday, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Well, with Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, I'm Jeff Rickard. Mark Dykton, how you doing this morning on a Friday? You look like all the bruises have healed up from the WWE action at home.
Yeah, my parents came in town last night. It was Grand Friends night at my daughter's school, so they came down from Illinois. So I had a nice evening with them.
Grand Friends?
Huh?
Friends?
Yeah, it used to be grandparents. Now they've changed it to Grand Friends because not everybody has grandparents.
No, I like that. That's kind of fire.
Will they go all in on Grandpa for WWE?
No. Grandpa needs a knee replacement after his car accident, so Grandpa needs to get a knee replacement in about a month. So he's not doing that yet. Maybe when he's recovered, he'll do the Kevin Nash and get up out of the wheelchair without the fake leg, and he'll do it. But for now, he's not doing it. So for anybody who watches wrestling, they know that reference. But no, had a nice night. Went out to dinner. Beautiful night. So we sat outside, had some beers, had some drinks, and enjoyed the evening. So it was a good night.
This might be the best weather week of the entire year.
It's beautiful so far.
Like, you get to mid-March and you get a string of 5 days like this. Today's going to be awesome. I'm decked out in my St. Patrick's Day gear. We're going to take the kids to the parade coming up here. I feel like we haven't gotten very good weather days in the past years for the parade. So certainly north of downtown coming up a little bit later this morning. You will have some road closures, so keep an eye out on that. And a glorious day for the St. Patrick's Day parade, along with a lot of green in the building at noon today for Michigan State and Oregon.
Looking forward to that. Indiana losing last night. Purdue gets the win. More on that in a minute, but let's go back to the Colts. Yesterday, they introduced two of their brand-new players, Daniel Jones, who I know that Kevin is already smitten with his press conferences. Can't wait for the next one. And then Charvarius Ward, who is a confident young man, James.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Charvarius Ward is, by his own admission, I guess, a great player. And so it was great to catch up with him. He came in very dapper, had the suit on. I was like, man, I should have wore a tie to this thing. So he looked pretty good. And he was also very candid about everything he's been through, needing a mental break from last year. Didn't reference it specifically, but he did lose his daughter in October, and he's been very open, even yesterday, about how he has PTSD, in California just because of everything that went down. He had some very just heartfelt things to say, but also there was an edge to him because he was basically saying, I'm hungry, I'm ready to go back out there and prove myself, and so I'm excited to see what he shows.
James, cornerback swagger on full display.
Oh, 100%.
From him yesterday. Two things that stood out. One, the open-mindedness that Lou Anarumo, I guess, has told him about potentially traveling with some of the top wideouts the Colts face. We have not seen the Colts operate in that manner really at all, especially here as of late. So when you look at next year's schedule, well, you face Nico Collins twice. You face Puka Nacua. You face DK Metcalf. You face Tyreek Hill. It's just the ability that you feel like personnel-wise that you have that wrinkle in your back pocket. You have a different pitch you can go to. Again, I'm not saying you need to do that 17 games out of the year, but man, especially with Nico, how many times has he just cooked the Colts from quarter one to quarter four? And the Colts have missed kind of that, again, true number one corner. So Ward seems to love that idea. And again, Lou Anarumo seems open to it. So I thought that's what stood out to me. And then the other thing, please don't do this until 10 o'clock, but I would highly encourage our audience out there to go back and listen to his appearance on with JMV. I thought it was an outstanding interview, just a hell of a story. And sadly, there's a lot of tragedy in it. And James, you just alluded to some of it. But I was inspired listening to him. And at the same time, I just think it's a great, fun personality that fans will enjoy to get to know a little bit more. Specifically, though, Ward shared that he thought he was going to the New Orleans Saints. And for those unfamiliar with his background, he is kind of from that general area, 2 hours, I believe, north of New Orleans. So that is the closest NFL team to where he was a Middle Tennessee State guy after JUCO. And so that's where I thought he was going to go. And when he told this story yesterday, I got to thinking, I'm like, this sounds like Danielle Hunter from last offseason. The hometown team is offering a contract, Danielle Hunter with Houston last year, and the Colts are going to sit it out. And according to Ward, the Colts upped their offer. So when we start to talk about what has Chris Ballard done differently, it's not just the quantity of free agents. 6 free agents, he's never done that since his first year as GM, when he totally just totally, frankly, slaughtered Ryan Grigson's roster. He's never done this, especially in the first week. But specifically, he said in January, I've got to do a better job at identifying and then finishing on these free agents. Well, if you listen to Ward yesterday, the Saints made an offer. That's his hometown team. You would think a guy that's dealt with a lot of the family stuff that he has, that would be pretty attractive to him. But what do the Colts do? They sweeten the pot, and that ended up being the final verdict. So those two things, him traveling with corners and Chris Ballard, again, being a man of his word from earlier this offseason, on full display with Charvarius Ward.
And James, looking at The Athletic this morning, there were some articles in there about who's improved the most during this offseason signing period and by position groups, and the Colts secondary was one of the three that they talked about.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about this earlier this week. Gus Bradley never received these kind of upgrades during his 3-year tenure. Now, I'm not saying that means he should have kept his job, but they are serious about changing the tenor of their team and also the personnel. And then when you bring in guys like Charvarius Ward, like Cam Bynum, their competition, to Kevin Bowen's point from earlier this week, but also they bring a certain standard, and we'll get into that as well. But Charvarius Ward is very unfiltered when it comes to what it takes to win. I think when he walked in, there was a certain presence about him. Like, I've been there, done that, and I want to do it again, and here's how we're going to do it. Not, I'm coming here to, pat everyone on the back and tell you, hey, you've been pretty close. I'm here to just, be one of the guys. No, I'm here to be a guy. And so I think that changes things for this team in a positive manner.
And getting back, I couldn't help but think what you had brought up last week, Kev, about Ward. 17 playoff appearances in a Super Bowl. That's so needed along this team on either side of the football, but particularly defense.
Yeah, I think it's so vital to have guys that have been there, done that. And again, San Francisco and Kansas City, the class of the NFL over the last handful of years, and those are his two stops. So I think that is a very, very important part of it. And I'm curious if that was kind of what maybe pushed it a little bit further for the Colts. Was that cherry on top on the Ward resume something of why the Colts decided to go in the manner that they did? Mooney Ward, correct, James Boyd? He was pretty adamant at JMV. That's what he wants to be called?
Yeah, so I have to ask, where the nickname come from. If it's anything like my family, sometimes there's like really no origin. It was just, I wanted to call you this when you were a baby.
He didn't have a lot of detail on it, to be fair. He was just like, I get asked this a lot. The story's not really one that, is going to be like, oh, wow, you picked up a dollar bill the other day and now you're called Mooney or Money.
I honestly think
however you look at it.
It's like a cultural thing. I'm serious. Like in my family, obviously I'm a black guy. They just make up names. Like they just make up stuff for you that you get called. Now, me being James, it was like we don't really have a nickname for that. You can't shorten it anymore. But most of my family, we have weird names for everybody. And then honestly, if you come around my family, you would never know their actual real name because we never use it. So I can understand why he wants to go by that because, calling him Charvarius every day might get a little formal.
Is that what Jeff was doing and calling me Kevy yesterday?
I was trying
Kevy
something
Webby.
new. I was trying something new.
Oh, my goodness.
I like that. Speaking of calling people, though,
squish.
Do you think Daniel Jones is that vanilla, or is he just try and go out of his way to be that vanilla? Or both, maybe.
So I can probably give you a little context with this because
you're in the room.
Yeah, and then also I did talk to Dan Duggan, who was our athletic writer for the Giants, and he's covered them for all 6 of his years in New York. And the response I got when asking the same question was, he is very reserved naturally, doesn't have a big personality. However, all of his teammates love him. They claim that he has personality. They claim that he's pretty funny. We probably will never see it, is kind of the vibe that I got. But it's just, I think him going to the New York market, already being kind of reserved, he became even more reserved because of the spotlight and attention.
Tissue.
I mean, yeah. Wouldn't you? I mean, we could talk about him not performing to a certain level and maybe not having the skills or the ability to, read progressions or make the throws. But that dude was getting killed for years behind a horrible offensive line, so that would make me a little scared too.
I think it's interesting, like in Ward and Jones's case, both of them play positions that I think you have to be very, very confident in your.
I like this point. I like this. But you also have to display it in like different ways.
Well, sure, guys do it very differently. I thought Joe Flacco was a pretty outwardly confident individual.
Yeah.
Honestly. I thought, and again, I get there's a fine line between outwardly confident and cocky. But yeah, Daniel Jones, honestly, James, I got a little bit of Shane Steichen vibes.
Oh, they're going to be best friends.
Of like,
that's what I said.
They are nice and they will like answer the question and give you some words. But then like you go back to transcribe and listen to it and it's like, oh
yeah,
my
I was gonna
gosh.
say, what's our definition of an
Not much
answer?
there.
Is
They
it just
said nothing,
words?
you know? But and I guess Jones honestly probably gives you more words than Shane does, so I could see why those two probably will get along quite well.
Can you
so.
imagine the double dip of a Shane Steichen and then followed by Daniel Jones press conferences?
It's like a
next
Spider-Man meme.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those two pointing at each other.
You guys are going to have some interesting days.
That
over
might
there at
be the
West
best
56.
competition of all. That might be a better competition than Daniel Jones versus Anthony Richardson on the field.
Kevin's going to be blending up like caffeine pills to stay awake.
Injecting those into my veins.
There you go.
It's having IV to the side.
This girl walked in with a 16-ounce Red Bull yesterday to start class. I'm like, gosh, it's 11:30 in the morning. I mean, what is she doing over there?
Maybe you should ask what she did
Oh,
to stay
yeah.
awake.
I was about to
Yeah.
say, look,
Way
Maybe she
back
was out
Wednesday
partying.
night, she had 10-cent
Yeah.
beers at
She was-
Bluebird
she was- yeah.
last night.
I was gonna tell you.
Will they be partying in Bloomington on Sunday?
It's hard to imagine right now because I look at the teams that are right in front of them, the 4 or 6 teams right in front of them. They kind of who they are. They are who they are at this point in time, James. Aren't they?
yeah, I mean, just don't play the Mike Woodson clip before the committee. Like, I imagine Mike Chappell, he's on like the Pro Football Hall of Fame, like voting panel or whatever, and he gives his speeches for certain guys every year, and he lays it out, and others do it as well. Don't go the Mike Woodson route if you're standing before somebody asking them to let you in. Like, that wasn't the most inspiring speech I've heard, but it is a tough situation because I thought they didn't get enough, perhaps, love for what they did prior to the Big Ten tournament, where we all thought, okay, maybe they're just in right now. And then you look at every single bracketology expert, I don't know if it's an expert, but guesstimations, and they're like last 4 in or right on the, I'm like, dang, I thought they were going to be like out of Dayton.
Here's the biggest problem right now. They're first 4 out, and they're supposedly by Joe Lunardi. We're just using that for conversational purposes. They'd be the top first 4 out team, right? So literally the first
the
team
69th
out.
team.
Right. San Diego State, their season's done. They have already lost in their semifinal. Xavier is already done. There's no more to play there. North Carolina, they've been playing well lately. They play Duke later on tonight without Cooper Flagg. Who knows what's going to happen there? And Texas has been on a big run. So even if North Carolina, Texas lose,
Yeah, those aren't going to be bad losses.
I just don't see how Indiana gets in past any of those teams.
Yeah, honestly, Texas beating A&M in double overtime yesterday was huge for their case and awful for Indiana's case. Indiana got some help, like Xavier losing, and late last night, I think Oklahoma lost in a thriller against Kentucky. SMU lost late last night. So there were some games that helped Indiana, but that Texas loss was certainly big. And then I think it's worth pointing out, too, Jeff, you bring up the teams ahead of Indiana. The teams right behind them, Ohio State is done. They're not going to get in all likelihood. But Boise State, Colorado State, and Dayton are still alive in their respective conference tournaments. So they have opportunities to improve their resume right now. So they could jump Indiana. And again, that is without the crazy bid stealing. Now, it's not that obvious where we might see no bid stealing this year. The American could have one. Memphis is the heavy favorite in that conference tournament. We'll see how that plays out. Maybe in the A-10 with VCU. But it's just it's a resume that when I hear people talk about it, the biggest strength is no bad losses. All their losses are in quad one. So does the committee view that as a strength when comparing them to other bubble teams?
I think,
or do they view the 2-10 against NCAA tournament teams and say, damn, you got 12 chances against teams we're putting up here in this bracket, and you only won 2 of them?
I think it's the latter. I think it's that one.
I do too.
And it's pretty damning because not that it's like
Because teams would dream to have 14 opportunities
exactly
against NCAA tournament
yeah,
teams.
and I think
12.
the simplest way to do it is in every sport we do this head-to-head matchups in the NFL. Who should win MVP? Well, when they play each other, Josh Allen did this and Lamar Jackson did this. The simplest way for humans to kind of dissect any information is just put them up head-to-head. And so you look at you versus the field, in this case, the 12 others who will be in the tournament or should be in the tournament. I mean, it's not a great look. I mean, 2-10 is rough, very rough.
It's almost like, too, I feel this way when you compare some of these teams. It's like, do you do it more on, like, percentage of your, like, quad one chances? Because, like, when you're comparing, like, Indiana to a mid-major team, it's hard for the mid-major team to get 12 of those opportunities.
I hear you.
If you're comparing them to a Boise State or a Colorado State or something along those lines. Again, we'll have Isaac Trotter does some bracketology for 24/7 Sports. He's going to join us a little bit later in the show to talk about Indiana's resume.
The other problem that Indiana has, to your point, Kevin, it's great that they don't have bad losses, and all other things being equal, I think that could help you. But you just can't get past what you guys were talking about. So many opportunities to earn your way in, and they just never did.
Even yesterday, Kevin, there's like 3-minute stretches where they look like they forgot how to play basketball.
Well, I mean, you get Oregon at 9 a.m. local time in a venue that, Jeff, you were there. What, 90-10 IU fans? 95-5?
At least.
Yeah.
Probably 95-5.
Do you guys believe in the conspiracy theory? Because if this was Notre Dame in college football, I'd have to hear every single non-Notre Dame fan say they're going to include Notre Dame because it's Notre Dame. Indiana's a brand. Indiana's going to bring fans. I don't care if it's Dayton. I don't care if it's Portland. Indiana's going to bring fans and bring eyeballs. So if this was Notre Dame in college football, I'd have to hear every single human tell me that the committee's going to look at Notre Dame differently because they're Notre Dame. So I bring that up and say it's college basketball.
So
Indiana's going to bring eyes.
Yeah.
Indiana's going to bring butts and seats. Will that matter?
I think the biggest problem is two of the teams they're chasing right now, North Carolina and Texas.
Well, let's compare them to Boise. If it
Okay.
comes down to Indiana and Boise,
Boise,
who's going to bring more fans to little old Dayton?
I mean, we know the answer to that, but I also think that.
So do you believe that the committee, I mean, these are athletic directors that sit there on the board?
No, let's
and
talk about it.
In some way, shape, or form, they probably will end the tournament, and they're going to say, how many eyeballs watched your tournament? How much money did we bring in for your tournament?
I love this argument because I do think there is a human element to we want more money in anything. I'm so serious about this. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy theory, but I definitely think
and the Big Ten want
that
more
is-
money?
I mean, it's true. I mean, we had to sit through during the college football playoff run or like the leading up to it, like hours of people trying to put Alabama in, and we all know it's the SEC bias to a certain degree, but also, man, Alabama has a lot of fans around the country. They're a brand. And so I do think that's a factor, but at the same time, in this case, I think the resume is just not strong enough to make that a sound argument and to even try to spin it as to, oh, we didn't pull this. But I definitely think that money's always a factor in everything. I mean, I'd like to think that the world doesn't work that way, but I am now 29 years old, and I've understood that.
You weren't born yesterday.
Yeah, money changes things. I need more of it.
The older you get, the more you find that out.
Man, everything costs.
Wait till you're 40.
Everything costs. When
We're
the weather
gonna
gets like
need,
this, I lose $50 when I walk outside.
We're going to need somebody in the Kelly School of Business to get me a sheet.
I like this.
To give me a little
Yeah.
spreadsheet on the return on investment Indiana got on Miles Rice, Caden Carlisle, and Umar Obalo.
How do you feel about the Umar Ballo statement? Like, I can see both sides of it. Obviously, death threats are not okay.
Never okay.
But when it comes to, like, just cheer for us or don't, I think that fans should be allowed to express their displeasure with the product, especially now where you're getting paid to be out there.
I think you probably summed it up exactly how I would have. Like, people that are, and we saw this with the Kansas kid. What was his name? Zeke Mayo?
Yeah.
A couple weeks back.
Yeah, that was horrible.
I mean, people that are DMing death threats or racial slurs, I mean, frankly, they're the scum of the earth.
Yeah.
They should be banned from social media. They should be banned from Assembly Hall or insert any venue here. But I also like to think, like Umar Ballo's clip from yesterday, he's talking about the 0.1% of the fan base.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I know a lot of very passionate IU basketball fans. I would like to think that the vast majority of them, if not all of them, are not DMing Ballo. Frankly, like, just
Look,
we don't need to be DMing any 20 or 21-year-old.
but check this out.
And so, like, I think when we see those clips, obviously, again, the death threats, the racial slurs, there's absolutely zero business for any of that stuff. I couldn't be more abundantly clear on that. Having said that, I think it's a misrepresentation to act like this is the fan base.
Well,
I-
he
that's what
also
I'm
did
saying,
say,
yes.
though, quote, I'm also grateful for the true IU fans that really support us throughout the whole journey because we had a lot of ups and downs. Those people, they deserve more, and I wish we could do more for them.
And if you lined up 100 IU fans, he's talking to what, 98 of them, 99 of them, and then
You'd
there's
think,
one in the
yeah.
line that is one that takes it a step too far.
The one thing I do want to point out, too, and to drive this point home, is that it's never just one team. It's not just IU's fan base, and I hate when fans do this. I mean, after every game, we saw it a little bit with the Trey Kaufman-Wren situation in Illinois, where he was saying, man, my brother had some things said to him that were racist and inappropriate. And being an Illinois guy, I have Illinois fans like, oh, man, are you sure he said that? I'm like, dude, not to be negative, but to be completely honest, every fan base of every team on earth, if they have a huge platform, there's always that 0.7% that crosses the line. And they do it, honestly, mostly on social media because they don't have to do it with their face or their name. And so I say all that to say, I can see to a certain extent, hey, I don't care if fans boo and say, oh, you stink, you're garbage, whatever. We paid you to be better than this. I mean, it's not the nicest thing in the world. I probably wouldn't do it because I'm just not as passionate, about it. I've been sort of neutered a little bit, when it comes to my fandom in sports media. However, there is just the other side of it too, where you just cross a line and you just shouldn't go there.
Again, I'm nodding my head at all that. James, I think you and I are pretty much in lockstep on this situation. I will add one more thing on the NCAA front for Indiana. Again, we'll have Isaac Schroeder coming up later in the show to talk about their bubble status. If you are very curious about Indiana trying to get in the tournament, you want Boise State, Colorado State, and Dayton to lose today. There's not a lot of really bubble-licious, and it's probably North Carolina with Duke. But again, if you look at Joe Lunardi's bracketology, he's already got North Carolina in the field. So they're not going to fall out, theoretically, if they lose to a Duke team with or without Cooper Flagg, who got hurt yesterday. So those are the three games I'd be watching a whole lot of. Boise, Colorado State, and Dayton. Those are the teams that you would want to lose.
It'll be interesting. I also had the good fortune yesterday at the game. I was sitting on the end of an aisle, right across the aisle. There was a couple. She was wearing her Purdue jacket. He was wearing his IU pullover.
I mean,
there we go.
As long as we don't see like the split jerseys and all that, I'm good.
Opposites attract.
They seem to be getting along fine, so it was okay. So that's
didn't you marry into like a IU?
I married into a heavy IU family. Yes, at the Notre Dame IU playoff game, I was lone Notre Dame soldier. I said to the guy next to me, he was probably 23. He was a Notre Dame fan. I was on the end of the row of all IU people, and I said, you don't know this, but I will hug you. I will punch you in the side. I will do some things to you physically that you probably will judge me for. Is that okay? And when Jeremiah Love ripped off the 98-yard touchdown, he might have hit me harder than I hit him.
I love it.
You asked for it. You had it coming.
And I was ready to go.
Then he called you Kevy at the end of the night.
Yeah,
He
squished my cheeks and said, this one's for Jeff.
It was I like him. Can you give me his number? Take him to a game tomorrow. All right, coming up in a moment, we'll get back to the Colts introducing two of their folks yesterday. Charvarius Ward, Daniel Jones in the building. James Boyd was there. Kevin Bowen writing about it as well. We'll talk about it with you next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Happy Friday. The NFL continues to cruise along, and the Colts picked up a number of reinforcements over the past week. We've been talking about it and documenting it all week long here on 95 and 107.5 The Fan. Yesterday, James Boyd, you were out at West 56th and waited all day, but it paid off. You got to see and speak with and hear a couple of the newest addition, and I think a guy that, man, I am so excited about the signings of Ward and also Bynum, and you got to hear from Charvarius Ward yesterday, and he was everything you wanted him to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you could win interviews, he probably won it right away. Walked in, had a confidence about himself, spoke very matter of fact, spoke with conviction, opened up himself a little bit, talked about some of the things that he's went through last season in particular and how hard it was for him to get through the death of his daughter. He didn't reference it specifically, but everyone knew that's what he was talking about. And he had a moment where he was just saying, like, I had to find my love for the game again, essentially. And he thought that, you know, getting a fresh start in Indianapolis will help him find that love again. And he made no, qualms about just his path to getting here. He was like, hey, this is my journey, and I'm excited about what's next. But I think he's also hungry to prove, Jeff, that he is still one of the best cornerbacks in the league. I think he looks at last year kind of like a one-off or a lost season.
Oh, the weird
because in
stuff
2023,
going on,
he was an all-pro, 23 passes, defense, pass breakups for the 49ers, a franchise record. And as you know, that's a franchise that had Ronnie Lott and Deion Sanders on the team. So he can play, and so I'm excited to see not only what he does for the team as an individual, but how he elevates the rest of the group because he has a certain standard that he carries himself to.
KB, as you've watched this week unfold and you've really had time to think about it and hear from guys and do whatever, we'll get back to that and get your thoughts on where you are at this point in time. But I believe we have Greg Rakestraw on the line right now on the Payless Flickers hotline. There you go, Greg Rakestraw. You've brought out the worst of me right away. How you doing?
Been doing that for years. I'm great. How are you?
I'm outstanding, but I'm excited. I know we got a big weekend of college basketball still ahead for Purdue, and we'll find out what happens with Indiana. But I also know you're really focusing in on some unbelievable high school matchups this week. I am really interested in going to Frankfort this weekend and seeing Fishers Harrison, and maybe, I don't know, I thought about Southport too, Brownsburg, Mount Vernon. You got Addicts playing Northview at Lebanon. I mean, where do I go? What do I watch?
All right, so I think the best matchup locally is going to be Guerin and New Pal at Greenfield Central because those are two teams capable of winning the 3A state championship. Some of the other matchups may be a little lopsided from a local standpoint. If you're going to go to Southport, the best game is the first game likely in terms of Brownsburg and Mount Vernon. Brownsburg being the upset story, being the lone team under 500 going into their sectional, ended up winning it. They have kind of caught fire as of late. Steve Lynch's teams always play great defense. Brownsburg finished the regular season by allowing 22 points in winning their regular season finale against Center Grove. I think that Addicts Northview game is going to be better than people expect just because Northview's a really good team. I think most know how good this Addicts team is as one of the better teams in the state. And if you're going to go to Frankfort and see Fishers, they are worth the price of admission of their own accord. But you got a couple of really neat stories in those two games. The game that features Clinton Prairie, this is their first regional game in 43 years. Now that they have gotten past that hurdle of winning a sectional, kind of the team that would be holding the magnifying glass to their aunt for many years was Central Catholic. That's the team that they play at Frankfort. And other than Southport, that's probably the closest proximity of regional site to two teams that are playing in it. So I think the crowds will be tremendous at that game. So if you're going to go see Fishers and Harrison, and by the way, Harrison playing in a regional for the first time in 26 years, but Fishers is the heavy favorite there. If you go to Frankfort, go see both games just because the crowd and the atmosphere should be spectacular.
So I want to know, where is Greg Rakestraw going to be?
I am going to Southport. That'll be our TV games this weekend. So Brownsburg, Mount Vernon at 1P, and then the 4P game, Lawrence North and Mooresville. And Mooresville, kind of similar to the stories we just talked about, they are playing in a regional for the first time since 1998. So LN, again, the heavy favorite in that game. But even with kind of the changes in formats in terms of sending multiple classes to different sites, because there are so many Indy area 4A sectionals in the size of Southport, it has pretty much rang true that the 4A teams locally will play at Southport Fieldhouse. So hence that's the television locale for me this weekend.
I think you might be proud of me because now when I look at these locations, I'm looking at the southern hosts versus the northern hosts being up in the region for so many years. But I do want to ask, how do you prepare for these types of weekends? Because I listen to you, when I get a chance. Obviously, I see you in person all the time when I'm at these games. And I think sometimes I and others can take it for granted what the job is. And I know you enjoy it and it's a love for it, but you put a lot of time into it too. So for those who might be interested in, what you do behind the scenes, what's the prep like?
So first of all, thank you. Secondly, life is much easier that most, not all of these schools keep their stats updated. At this time of year, maybe you're a game or two off, but you get the general idea in terms of odd max preps. And so a lot of it is simply, once I do that, is me updating records, kind of going through the history. So obviously scouring John Harrell's website. And when I won for the first time the Indiana Sportscaster of the Year from the ISSA, John was being recognized that day. And I looked at him and I said, by the way, I want to make sure I recognize you, sir, because he was there. And yes, he is a real person. Was just to go, hey, I hope you know the amount of marriages you have saved amongst broadcasters in this state because of the time in which you have saved all of us from preparation. We can all go to one site and figure these things out. It's like these historical references that I can make. It's all at my fingertips because of what John Harrell has put together over the course of the years. You got to know how to look it up and research it. So a lot of time on Max Preps, a lot of time on John Harrell, a lot of time emailing coaches. But frankly, the work by the time you get to the reads run has already been put in because I think I've called like 500,000 games since Thanksgiving weekend or something along those lines. So I haven't seen Mount Vernon this year, but I've seen their kids a lot the last couple of years. And even though this group is relatively young, they played together for the last year or two. Obviously, LN, I think this is my 9th or 10th LN game that I have had. Well-versed on them. I've had Brownsburg a couple of times. Mooresville is the exception. This is the first Mooresville basketball game I have had in 7.5 years. That's kind of a sign that this is rare for them to kind of be playing in terms of the regional round.
He is the legend, Greg Rakestraw. Rake, it was great to see you on Monday over at Corteva Coliseum, just across the street at the Fan Zone event. Thank you for giving Rosie a nice little knuckles before we walked in to the Horizon League semifinals.
I tried to get her all hepped up on sugar with those free cookies I had as best I could. So hopefully that worked out well for you.
Yeah, she was wired to go. Her favorite mascot was the Oakland Grizzlies and not whatever that Robert Morris mascot was. Okay, I've asked you this probably a handful of times in the last 2 months. This will be the final time I ask you it. Men's tournament, state of Indiana, 6 o'clock rolls around. Over under 1.5 teams from the state of Indiana will see their name in that bracket.
Take the over. I think Indiana is just going to squeeze in. There's always potential bid stealers, but I think they have done by an eyelash enough to be that second team from the state of Indiana.
Rake, I don't know if our car rides to Notre Dame have ever included this topic, but I almost feel like growing up in this state, some would rather read instead of the Bible Season on the Brink. And tragically, we lost the author of that yesterday, and John Feinstein. And his work as a writer is, right up there with any from a sports standpoint, and maybe even more than that. I was going to ask you this, and I should probably know it. Do you remember how the Knight relationship started to where he got that access?
No, I do not, to be honest with you. And obviously this was written during the, 84-85 season?
Right.
And so for as long as I have been covering sports in this state, during that season I would have been 8 years old because that book then spurred the interest throughout the state, but especially in my part of the state, in Damon Bailey. And then you would kind of like go back and go, oh, yeah, I remember hearing about this or seeing this kid or whatever the case may be. And so that all originated from that book. And so how that relationship developed, I do not know. And I have probably read bits and pieces of that book over the years. The first book that I actually read of his was Forever's Team, was the story of Duke making the finals in 78 before we all disliked Duke because they made it then every year back when they were still more of an underdog story. And so that's kind of what got me hooked on reading John's work. And have lost track of how many of like his 40-plus books that I have read over the years. But he and I have had on-air conversations before. I'm not sure we ever had the pleasure of having a real-life conversation, but obviously a fan of his work, and that was a tremendous loss for journalism, for sports writing in our country.
Last one from me, Rake. I've asked people this before, and I love the responses I get. Who is the best boys basketball high school player, or one of them, well, not even the best, who is an underrated great high school basketball player you saw in the state of Indiana that you think just historically might not get as much love because maybe they didn't have the pro career or the college career, but you look back and you're like, man, these one or two guys could really play?
Oh, that's a great question, and I'm not sure I've got the time to fire the synapses off this morning to give that the just desserts that it deserves. So here is the completely different, like political candidate pivot.
I like this.
Here is the direction I'm going to go with this. I want to make sure that there is, especially from generation kind of mine and above, that tends to short circuit or short change the greatness of teams of this era, because it is the multi-class era. Because when you look at what Fishers is trying to accomplish with the win they had on Saturday, they have won 40 consecutive games. They are the sixth team in the history of the state to do that. And that sounds like it's a great accomplishment, but you're also like, really, that's it? Only six? Well, you got to remember from before 1997 and backwards, only one team would finish the season undefeated, if that.
Right.
And so when you look at the teams that have accomplished that feat, a good chunk of those have done so in the modern era. Basically, 3 have come since class basketball, 2 happened before class basketball. So to illustrate how good that Fishers team is, here's the group that has done this, okay? Odin and Conley at LN won 50 consecutive games when they were in the middle of their three-peat over a 2-year span. Bloomington South, who won in 2009 with Jordy Hulls, and then won several games into the tournament the next year with guys like D. Davis, Eric Fromm, Turner, et cetera. They won 49 consecutive games. Warren Central, that finished unbeaten in the 18 season, and then won the Marion County tournament the next year before being beat, won 46 consecutive games. Then there's this matter of Crispus Attucks with Oscar Robertson on the team.
Who's that guy?
In the mid-50s that won 40-something games. And then James, a team I'm sure you have heard about from people, but people in this state know, the group known as Purple Rain, the Marion Giants, that won 3 consecutive titles from 85 through 87 with Jay Edwards, Lyndon Jones, Keys, Persinger, et cetera, one of the all-time great Indiana high school basketball teams. So again, Fishers is now 6th of that group, tied for 5th with Marion. They win on Saturday, as they're expected to. That makes their 5th in terms of their active win streak. And so I just want to make sure that people don't shortchange the accomplishments of some of the great teams that we have seen. Like in the last 20 years, some of the best teams ever in Indiana high school basketball have existed right now. And I want to make sure they get their just due.
And Ray, correct me if I'm wrong. I've watched Fishers a couple times, and I don't know if I'm just making the lazy John Anthony Hall, David Bell comp, but like, do you get a little bit of those Warren vibes?
I'll cut you off. Say that again for me after you said John Anthony Hall.
I was just going to say, I don't know if I'm making the comp to him and David Bell, but I get Warren vibes of just incredibly balanced.
Correct. And frankly, Ben Davis is the same way 2 years ago. And so you could include Ben Davis in that group where eventually we may look at the best athlete of those teams as a guy that played in the National Football League and not a guy that played major college basketball because of Mark Zachary. But on that Warren team, David was like the only Division I recruit. They were just there was just a bunch of D2 and AI kids that were really good, but, they were a dominant team. For Ben Davis, it's a couple of it's 3 Division I kids on that roster. Zane Dowdy, Sheridan Sharp, and KJ Wyndham had a really good freshman year at Northwestern, but against Mark Zachary, probably the highest-end athlete of that group. For Fishers, it may end up being different. You can probably have that conversation about John Anthony Hall now, who is, again, a ridiculously talented athlete that plays 3 different sports. Jason Gardner eventually will probably play at kind of a similar level in terms of college basketball. But again, you're right. From an athletic standpoint, it's John Anthony Hall that stands out of that group currently.
Rake, appreciate you. I know it's going to be a fun weekend. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to it and sharing it with you. In the meantime, we'll talk to you about the Colts some other time because I know there's a lot going on there, but we got to run, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, fellas.
There he is, the one and only, the great Greg Rakestraw there on the Payless Liquors hotline. You were asking about Bob Knight and John Feinstein. I told you I had worked with John and gotten to know him a little bit. So he had covered the 84 Olympic team that Bobby Knight was obviously a part of. And then, remember the chair throw? Feinstein was writing an article about Indiana when that happened, so he had to mention that. But he also said in that article that, look, it's wrong, but compared to a lot of the other crimes going on in college basketball, it's not that big a deal. Knight appreciated that he didn't get killed in that, invited him to dinner, and things progressed. The next thing you know, he's invited to be a part of that. The other thing that came from him writing that book, the NCAA changed rules that, like, one person can't be in the locker room before or during a game. If one media member is in there, then all of them have to be in there. It's considered an open locker room at that point in time. So
yeah,
a lot of interesting things around that book.
Mark Monteith did something similar with Purdue. I don't know. Now it might have been a decade ago. But certainly, I mean, boy, I can remember reading it in Rich Andriel's class, the great Rich Andriel, back in my days at Cathedral. Bubble-wise, we'll continue to keep you updated from an Indiana point of view. I think you're seeing kind of a mixed bag of where, things are at right now. Are they one of the last four in? Are they one of the first four out? Who they need to root against today? We'll get all those names to you and more on the Colts signings. I know James Boyd was busy nerding out about a kicker late last night. That's got to be one of the more humbling closes to a Thursday you've had in your work, but nonetheless, great work on that, and we'll touch on that kicker here upcoming. Mark Dykton, cue us on the Morning Checkdown. Well, let's start with the late one. Last night, the Boilers got it done, 76-71 over USC. Trey Kaufman ran outstanding. He had 30. I said to you guys in the opening segment, I love that Matt Painter didn't put him in timeout for the final X amount of minutes in the first half. He did get 2 fouls. That game wasn't slipping away, but USC was building a lead. What does Matt Painter do? He trusts Trey Kaufman-Renn. Back in the game with 2 fouls. I think it really benefited Purdue. And then as much as maybe Purdue fans don't want to hear it, James Boyd, I thought the whistle was very favorable in the last 30 seconds.
Never apologize for a win, but it definitely was favorable.
Amen.
But, I got my Sasha Stefanovic shirt on today. Shout out to my guy on the staff now, double nickel. So they're moving on. And, again, it's all about surviving and advancing.
Matt Painter on the W last night.
I thought the difference in the game probably for us was just barely out-rebounding them. If you look in a possession game and just getting 3 more rebounds, it doesn't look like it's much, but I thought Cam's ability to rebound really helped us. TK obviously had 30 and 7. But it wasn't our best night, but I think USC had a lot to do with that. And just happy to see our guys hang in there and make enough plays to pull out the victory.
Late one again tonight. They are actually favored. They'll wear the road jerseys tonight against Michigan, but they are favored by 3.5. Again, these two teams split in the regular season. Purdue throttled them in Mackey, and then a great one in Ann Arbor with Michigan making the plays down the stretch. Braden Smith's heroics almost got Purdue another win.
Speaking of Braden Smith, I stole this from Dave Revson last night. His career averages, right? 13, 8 assists, 4 rebounds, 2 steals. There's only one other player in Big Ten history that has averaged that over their career. Do you know who the other guy is?
Oh boy, the history of the Big Ten.
Aaron Kraft.
Isaiah.
Magic Johnson.
Ooh. That's pretty good company. Pretty good company.
Way off, but yes, that's great company.
Braden Smith,
just all those stats across the board.
Yeah,
he had that stat a few weeks ago. We mentioned it, like 1,200 points, 700 assists, and 500 rebounds, and no one in NCAA history had done that through 3 years.
Yeah.
So, again, Trey Kaufman-Renn, outstanding. I thought Colvin and Heidi, big for Purdue last night as well. Mike Woodson, he made a pitch after the loss yesterday to the NCAA Tournament Committee. It sounds like me trying to pitch my wife on another golf trip for me here. Coming up this year, here was Mike Woodson to the committee.
I think we're playing some of our best basketball tonight or this afternoon wasn't an indication of how we've been playing. We've been very competitive. Even in the games that we've lost, go back to the Maryland game at home, the UCLA game, the Michigan game at home. They're all competitive, 1 or 2 possession games. Beating Purdue, had a shot to beat Purdue at their spot. So we've had a lot of close games that we just weren't able to make the play here or there. But these last 2 weeks, I think we've been playing some pretty damn good basketball. And again, I got to give Oregon a lot of credit because, again, they played well today.
Yeah, I thought that the pitch itself, little 50 Cent-esque. I was like, I don't know where this is going. and maybe he talked just a little bit too long, but I would have liked a little bit more conviction, saying, hey, this is what we did. Not necessarily like this monotone, oh, we tried hard. Like, nah, like sell yourself. Sell yourself. And so we'll see. I thought it was interesting that, Rakestraw was saying he thinks they're going to be in by an eyelash. And we'll see if they have, a good weekend of help from other teams.
It might seem like a little thing, but if you're IU, I guess you're maybe rooting for a Big Ten final to be Michigan State and Purdue. I mean, those are your 2 best wins.
Yeah.
Those are your only 2 tournament wins. I don't think does Michigan State climb to the 1 line? I don't think so. But if you could say, hey, they, whatever, beat the Big Ten regular season and tournament champ on their home floor, I believe that would be Michigan State. I think it was Michigan State's only home loss. That might hold something. But again, they'll sweat it out. We'll continue to update you on that throughout the morning. Butler's season comes to an end yesterday. Just really an awful season for Thad Matta and company there, as St. John's really controlled that game from the opening tip. Pacers are a 10-point favorite tonight in Philly. It looks like the Philly Mad Ants, the Philly Cheesesteaks. I don't know. What do you call their G League team?
I go with cheesesteaks.
Okay.
I like that one.
Tomorrow in Milwaukee for the Pacers, no Tyrese Halliburton on the injury report. So his availability for tonight looks to be there, and you assume, of course, a back-to-back for him. So
The Sixers G League
Huge
team is the
weekend.
Delaware Bluecoats.
Oh, that's right. I knew that. Did Ronald Norad coach them, or was that the Celtics version?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I mean, we went over this the other day. I mean, like, it sounds like some of these dudes are, like, doing my taxes. Jeff Doughton Jr., Ricky Council IV, Alex Reese, Justin Edwards. Didn't we all, like, go to high school with a Justin Edwards?
Everybody's got to have a side hustle, Kev, in today's world.
Jared Butler. They've lost a ton here. They've got 10 dudes on the injury report. The Pacers have none.
Yeah, they're not trying to win. I mean, to be honest, it reminds me of when the Pacers had Malcolm Brogdon. He had like Achilles tendonitis to end the year, and we all kind of knew, like, we're going to ask about him every day, but he ain't playing no more here. It's all about the tank, baby. And if any team knows about tanking and trying to get, a high draft pick,
Process
it is
2.0.
There you go.
On the other side, Chris Ballard's competition train has continued at a position that maybe not a lot of people had pegged entering the offseason. What is that? We'll hit on the other side. Fan Morning Show on a Friday. Thanks for sticking with us here. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
On the back half of the show. Oh, come on. Let's go. Never quite sure if you're waiting for us to go or you're waiting for another beat.
We're about to talk about a position in football, and this song is called Can I Kick It? So it's a little bit of a hint of what's
this
coming.
might be one of your more popular re-entry songs.
I love this song. I love A Tribe Called Quest regardless, but this song is great.
I also feel like we start 1st and 15 one segment every show. So this is our 1st and 15 segment. Tar Glenn, false start. We're behind the chains.
There you go.
And we might need a field goal kicker maybe to end this drive, right?
Yeah.
I'm just happy to be here because we've had a really good week of content to talk about with the Indianapolis Colts. And, Kevin, your big question at the beginning of the week was, will Chris Ballard's deeds match his words? You've talked about the fact that so far they have done that, and it just kind of keeps trickling in now, too.
I believe the Colts right now are second in the league, second in the AFC in spending this week, and I believe 5th in the entire NFL. So if you need to have any evidence, did actions meet words? Imagine telling someone that at the start of the week. The Colts will spend the 2nd most of any team in the AFC. The Colts will spend the 5th most of any team in the NFL. That is certainly actions meeting words. James Boyd, of all the places for competition, I didn't necessarily think there would be one at this position, but last night you were deep in the weeds of a Spencer Schrader contract.
Yeah, and Matt Gay's contract in particular. So I got it confirmed that Spencer Schrader,
And I guess refresh our audience, if you don't mind, on Schrader.
So he was an offseason kicker for the Colts last year. He actually was elevated to the active roster for week 1 last year because if everyone remembers, Matt Gay was out with a hernia injury, went 3 for 3 on extra point attempts, and then he moved on to the Jets and the Chiefs and ended up playing 4 games, didn't miss any field goals, didn't miss any extra points. Had a pretty solid rookie season before going on IR in Kansas City. And so I'll say all that to say they signed him as a free agent. The team announced that. Then I got to confirm that it's a 2-year deal. And the 2-year deal had me like, okay, that's a little interesting. So I did some digging, talked to some people, and went down a rabbit hole. And long story short, my understanding of it is this will be extra offseason competition for Matt Gay, who has taken a dip since coming to the Colts. I went crunch the numbers.
Particularly on long field goals.
Yes. So in general, he's at 82% field goal conversion rate in his 2 years with the Colts. Over his 3 previous years with the Rams, he was at 92%. 10% drop off. When it comes to 50-yarders, he's 11 of 22, 50% with the Colts. He was 12 of 15 with the Rams. That's 80%. And so just to give you more context, he did not miss from inside 50 last year. So in my mind, it would be kind of hard to move on from this guy if he doesn't miss from inside 50. 50-yard field goals are hard. However,
he was 61 of 61 if you include extra points inside of 50 last year.
Exactly. So I get it. He was missing a lot of things left early in preseason even. He was having some issues. But he wasn't as bad, I think, as like the optics might make it seem. But again, my understanding is that competition is good for everybody, and Anthony Richardson isn't the only guy who might be competing for his job this summer if Matt Gay continues to struggle. I'll say this to say, Schrader only had 1 year, pretty good year. Never kicked from beyond 50, but also you look at Matt Gay's contract, there is, some incentive to move on from him if he struggles in training camp. Right now his cap hit is at 6.7, no more guaranteed money in his deal, $6.7 million. But the trick is if they released him today, they would only create about $2.7 million in cap versus having to pay $4 million in dead money, which in layman's terms means the money you have to pay even after you cut the guy. But if you wait to post-cut him after June 1st, post-June 1, it actually flips. And so you would create $4.75 million in cap space versus $2 million in dead money. So I say all that to say it's not a huge number. I still think that it's Matt Gay's job, and it's a long shot for him to lose it. However, if he struggles a lot in camp, it is something to keep an eye on and consider because of the financial implications. And, again, they brought another kicker to obviously kick. And you're not going to keep 2 on the roster throughout the season, not on the active roster. So just, get your antennas up a little bit and keep that in mind. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk about kickers.
Wonderful job.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
well
you.
done.
It took me forever to understand everything.
And then part of me thinks, boy, nothing says an NFL franchise like a quarterback and a kicker competition, both in the same training camp. All seriousness, I thought you laid that out pretty well, James. Matt Gay's under contract for 2 more years. It's not the most insane contract anymore, but at the same time,
no more guaranteed money.
I would like to think that, yeah, maybe some competition would be healthy. You mentioned Schrader. He was 9 of 9 last year on extra points. I think 5 of 5 on field goals. But like you said, didn't kick past 50. Now, he was kicking at Notre Dame the year prior. And he was a little bit erratic. I was surprised how accurate he was as an NFL kicker last season. But sure, why not? Matt Gay he certainly hasn't lived up to the contract. I think that's a very fair statement to make. I also think, to your point, when you haven't missed inside of 50, it's not like as egregious as it was as Adam Vinatieri back, 5 years ago when he was missing extra points and all of that. So I guess we will add this to the offseason list. And I probably didn't think about that. I maybe would have thought Schrader would have gotten more of an open. I mean, I guess this is somewhat open. I think Matt Gay, to your point, is still the leader in the clubhouse, if you will. But I would have guessed maybe Schrader would have had a better opportunity to kick elsewhere. It's probably an indicator that the Colts have said to him, hey, man, we feel like this is really, really open. And don't think of Matt Gay as he's the high-paid kicker anymore, and you're going to have to do a lot to supplant him.
Right. The way I look at it is, again, the messaging I received and the general understanding I have is that we want to promote competition as a franchise throughout every spot.
Yeah.
And again, I think this goes back to Chris Ball's messaging overall. When he said it, remember he's told us at the Combine, it's not just Anthony. I want to promote competition with everybody at every position. And I think their actions are sort of backing that up. And so it'll make for an interesting summer for sure. So in between, asking KB, hey, was that a completion? Who Daniel Jones throw that to? I'm ducking behind offensive linemen because I can't really see. We'll also be documenting kicks a lot more because it matters. And so I'm excited about it. I don't want to get out to Westfield just too soon because when I get out there, it is hot and steamy. But, again, these things are coming.
I'm looking forward to the daily today, 7-on-7. Daniel Jones was 10 of 12, and Anthony Richardson was 8 of 13. And in your kicking contest, so-and-so Schrader was 5 for 5, 45 yards and in, but missed 2 50-yarders and so on and so forth. Those are my favorite parts to read when it comes to camp.
Jeff, I can never remember anything it is so funny how we do this. And Kevin, we do this every year. We document everything. We keep it all organized. I would honestly say Kevin's more organized than me. However, I live and breathe off of every throw that these people make, and I write the stories. And then, we get a month into the season. I could not tell you what Anthony's completion percentage was during camp last year. Who cares?
You have access. You might as well report on the access that we have. That's kind of how I view it. By the way, shout out to Gardner Minshew. He will be backing up Patrick Mahomes next year. So is this what you do? You come to the Colts, you are somewhat average as a quarterback, and then you go to the Chiefs and be the backup?
Yeah, where does Carson Wentz go for me?
So is Daniel Jones looking forward to winning a Super Bowl with the Chiefs here in 2027? As the backup.
If it works, let's go.
So you might want to go to Philly since they're the defending champion, but
will Carson Wentz be the odd man out here? Taylor Heineke to the Chargers. I mean, I don't know how many of these backup jobs are still open. Of course, we still have the Pittsburgh domino to fall. Where's Rodgers? Where's Russell Wilson? Russell Wilson reportedly Cleveland and New York, the Giants.
Yep.
So a little bit of quarterback domino still
it's
here
like
on
to
the
be
back
Russell
end.
Wilson. You're just waiting on Aaron Rodgers. Nobody will sign me until Aaron makes his decision.
Gosh, Aaron Rodgers just pisses me off.
Welcome to the club, Kevin.
Did you see the picture?
And maybe
that
Mark's
was
rubbed off
circulating?
on me with
yes.
that, but
Did you see the picture of him walking on the beach with a blanket on the other day?
I did see
pondering his NFL future.
And the caption I saw, Jeff, and this is why I, we don't have to get on my soapbox and say I hate Twitter, but Lord have mercy. Someone captioned it and said, "What a powerful image." And I'm like,
a real NFL reporter, if I remember.
I'm
too.
like, am I like
sarcasm in that?
No, it was
It
like
was for real.
No, it wasn't. And to Jeff's point, it was not it was like an aggregation account. So they're just taking stuff, kind of boosting things for engagement. But I thought that was so funny because there's nothing powerful about any of this. Like, he looks like the average person walking down the beach with a towel.
I'm sure it was not staged at all either.
Who knows?
You never know.
I mean,
He was on
I
an
didn't see much.
ayahuasca trip and just roaming the beach.
Speaking
sands.
of other things happening in the NFL, Kevin, did you see Cowboys and former Cowboys are getting on each other at this point too?
Yeah, I did see a little chirping on social media last night between DeMarcus Lawrence
my goodness.
and Micah Parsons.
We'll talk about that. That's right. We'll talk about that in Jerry
and
World.
Vegas has spoken on the Indiana job.
I like
Do we
it.
have a favorite for the IU opening down there in Bloomington?
Lots going on. Stick to it here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. During the break, we've been talking about the soon-to-be vacant job for head coach for the Indiana Hoosiers. And I know, Kevin, you had some Vegas odds coming up in a moment here. But to your point during the off-air conversation, James, what do Indiana fans truly want and expect, and what can Scott Dolson get?
I'm not sure. My thing is, what do you really expect for this team that's in the realm of, like, being obviously of a high standard, but realistic? Like, I just feel like if you can't live up to being Bobby Knight, it's like, who are they going to go get? And Kevin, you would know more than me, having grown up in the state and been around the program a lot more as far as just covering it. But it's like, no matter what name you suggest, there's 15 people, and I get it. It's the loud majority, or loud minority rather, on social media. But I'm like, man, like they're killing whoever any candidate is. I don't know.
Yeah, the Kentucky Louisville searches last year I thought were really interesting. I think if you would have asked Kentucky Louisville fans that at the start of their respective searches they'd end up with Mark Pope and Pat Kelsey respectively, they would have been very surprised. By all accounts, Indiana-wise, it looks like the search is going down that path. And again, we'll see ultimately. It could be some secretive stuff going on behind the scenes. Vegas right now has Greg McDermott as the favorite. Next up on that list would be Ben McCollum of Drake. And for what it's worth, yesterday, Jeff Goodman, national college basketball cover, tweeted out one of the top candidates for the Indiana opening has really impressed Scott Dolson in reference to Ben McCollum. For those unfamiliar with McCollum, 43 years old, he dominated the Division II ranks. Frankly, it's probably a disservice to the word dominate for how much he did. I think it was like Northeast Missouri State, Northwest Missouri State, one of those two. And then has been at Drake for just 1 year, and they won the Missouri Valley. They will be in the tournament. He brought a lot of his Division II players to Drake, a la Paul Casaro, a little bit here with IU Indy. By all accounts, this dude has been described as like an offensive genius, like a wizard in what his teams have been able to do offensively. Many Division I coaches have actually reached out to him to get to know a little bit more about that. If you want to put on more of the philosophical, or I should say kind of mental approach hat, he has adopted the philosophy that he only recruits dudes with uber positive outlooks.
Got the Ted Lasso thing going on.
A little Ted Lasso-y, sure. So some people might laugh at that. Some people might say that's maybe healthy for everything that goes into being an Indiana University. But I must say, you spend 1 year in Division I basketball, and then you go to the town of Bloomington, where you walk into Buffalo's and people want you to autograph their children.
Yeah, I mean,
that is going to be quite.
That's culture shock.
You can be an offensive wizard. You could be the greatest X's and O's mind ever, but man, it is a different animal in old Drake action than it is old Bloomington action.
Yeah, I think that is a great point you just made, KB, about all it means to be a head coach at a high major program. Like, it isn't just X's and O's. We talked about this actually with Shane Steichen. It's everything else that comes with it too. The attention, the media requests, the, recruiting, NIL, like all of these things factor into what you see on the court. And so you got to be willing to accept, obviously, the greatness and the good things that comes with that. And I'm sure you'll get a nice raise if you get the opportunity, but also, the perhaps bad parts about all of that, because you're going to get scrutinized to the nth degree. I mean, the first time you lose a game and you're the new coach at IU, and say it's a team you get upset by or whatever, everyone's going to call for your head. That's just how it is. And so you got to be able to withstand that and obviously build a winner that people can kind of rally around.
I think it's difficult because you're trying to, I think, find that mix of obviously excellent coach, but also one that can handle.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was saying. Yeah.
Which I think is difficult. Archie Miller, I think, got swallowed up a bit. Mike Woodson, I think, got swallowed up by, frankly, he just didn't know how college basketball really operated. So now you look at this hire, and you would look at Greg McDermott, and you would say, okay, he's been at, Creighton. For those unfamiliar, Creighton is a big deal in that part of the country. Creighton has an excellent fan base, a huge arena.
They're good every year.
He has been at much more of a higher college basketball level is what I'm getting at. Now, some people looked at Jeff Goodman's report yesterday, and there are some whispers that Fran McCaffrey will be exiting at Iowa, and there's heavy Iowa ties for Ben McCollum, the Drake coach. Is this a agent leverage play from that aspect
Almost
to
always,
it.
yeah.
Now, Drake also plays an absurdly slow pace. And at the end of the day, it's just wins. But that is probably something to note. Stylistically, they are much different than how I think a lot of people view high-level college basketball teams that get up and, run, our elite recruit's going to want to play in a slow pace. That's, again, he's got a bunch of D2 dudes and dudes from Wyoming. So you're going to be recruiting, obviously, to a different sort of clientele, if you will. So, again, this IU season could be over 6 o'clock Sunday. And the next head coach's season could be over at 2 o'clock in 6 days. I mean, Thursday is the first round of the tournament. If you assume your next coach is coming from a tournament team, we could start to get some wheels turning. A week from today, I'm not saying we know the head coach, but again, you could have Greg McDermott's season over, Ben McCollum's season over, Chris Beard's season, whoever you want to throw on that list.
I am really intrigued by McCollum. One of the things I think Indiana needs to look at, like a lot of other schools are looking at this point in time, is beyond just your athletic director. I like this idea in this age of NIL and everything else going on of having a general manager for the football team, a general manager for the basketball team that handles all that stuff. So essentially, your coach is in on recruiting and coaching. And the rest of it is done by somebody with expertise in those fields.
Yeah, I don't hate that idea. I guess I would just like to see where it's worked so far. I think it's
we're just starting to see it.
Yeah, like a new concept. And obviously, to your point, Jeff, you don't really want to wait for everybody else to do it before you move with conviction. And if you feel like that's a good move for you, then why not do it? But I feel like we're still in like that testing stage. I know Andrew Luck's out there in Stanford as the football general manager and things like that. But I want to see, and we'll get some data eventually, not tomorrow, but in a few years of like the success of that format and how much it works. But to your point, I think you kind of saying this in a roundabout way, all hands on deck, right? Like whatever you can do to get someone in there to change the program around. And I want to ask you, KB, like, do you want to trade places with Scott Dolson? Like, how much pressure is on that guy right now to make the quote-unquote right hire?
Yeah, isn't the Signetti hire enough for what he did?
Nah, man, we greedy. Look,
yeah,
greedy.
Obviously,
Greedy.
this is IU basketball.
Yeah.
I certainly know what that means. Tons of pressure. I mean, but again, you don't take this job without realizing that at some point your resume is largely going to be defined by it's the AD at Notre Dame.
It's big boy basketball.
Did you get the football program back on track or not?
Mm-hmm.
In Bloomington, did you get the basketball program back on track? And like, I laugh at people that are like, Indiana fans are so unrealistic with their expectations. Like, to me, your expectations should be you actually can shoot the basketball. You're not a team living and dying on the bubble seemingly every year. You're a team that has no young pipeline of players to turn to. I look at this current roster, and I struggle to find that. And no idea of putting the entire puzzle piece together from a roster standpoint. I think IU fans deservedly should have an expectation that's higher than that. And I'm not saying it should be Final Four or bust every other year. Like, go be a 5 seed or a 7 seed and whatever, play to the second weekend of the tournament a couple of times. Like, you look at the last decade plus, that's barely happened, certainly since Tom Crean. So, again, we'll start to get, I think, the wheels turning a little bit more on this.
All right, coming up in a moment, we'll continue to talk about all the things we saw at the Big Ten tournament yesterday, get you ready to go for a big weekend of high school basketball, and, of course, more on the Colts and a very busy week, as busy as any other team in the NFL, frankly. We'll talk about it next as we continue on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Mark Dykton, great work on the reentry. I think this is very fitting for the weather we will have today. Looks to be excellent downtown Indianapolis. Parade will begin just north of the circle here, coming up at 11:30 for the St. Patrick's Day Parade. I feel like we haven't had great weather in past years for it, so everybody heading out for that. Enjoy. It will be as well.
Will you go Ferris Bueller and jump into the parade? Treat us to a song? Something like that?
Unless Max Bowen runs out there, I don't think I will be anywhere close to jumping into any parade.
I can see Kevin knocking one out. What do you think?
I mean, I believe in Kevin
Knocked
more
two out, haven't you?
than maybe
Yeah,
most others, but I think KB is a
songs,
sneaky.
No.
You know, I'm going to use all the cliches that they use on like white athletes. Just sneaky.
Yeah, exactly.
Got some moxie. He might get out there and surprise some people.
Yeah.
Sneaky vocals.
Yeah.
For Kevin
Third
Bowen.
and 7, you got to at least recognize him a little bit.
Jill, I like that Mark's brain immediately went to new kids, though.
Yeah.
Well,
Everything in your brain is about new children.
it's a father of
Well,
3.
I don't have to worry about that anymore.
No shock
As I
there.
sat on the couch around this time.
You got the mid-March tie there. By the way, shout out to my brother, Ryan Bowen. Happy birthday to him, the big 4-1.
Yeah.
To my great brother, so happy birthday to him. Again, some green inside of Gamebridge Fieldhouse today. Michigan State, Oregon will kick things off at noon. We've got the top 8 seeds left in the Big Ten tournament, so no bid stealing whatsoever coming from Gamebridge Fieldhouse, but great matchups all day. MSU, Oregon at noon, UCLA, Wisconsin to follow. I love Maryland, Illinois at 6:30. I think that's a great one there.
In my opinion, that might be
To open
the
the night
championship
session.
game.
I mean, all
honestly.
these games, like if I would have told you the start of the week, if you wouldn't have looked at the bracket, Michigan State, Oregon is a championship game. Okay. UCLA, Wisconsin is a championship game. Illinois, Maryland is a championship game. Purdue, Michigan is a championship. Like, I don't think those would have stunned anybody, and those are our 4 quarterfinal games here coming up for the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, I think to your point, we all were like, hey, who's going to win the Big Ten tournament a few days ago? And we could have came up with 4 or 5 different answers. And so I think that just speaks to the parity of the league. There is no longer the dominant Zach Edey figure in the league, even though Braden Smith is the Big Ten Player of the Year, 3rd straight Purdue player to win it. It's just the gap between them and everyone else isn't as far as it's been, in recent years.
James Boyd, you were over at West 56th Street yesterday. Javarius Ward and Daniel Jones both meeting the media. Sounds like could hear from Cam Bynum maybe next week. Your impressions of Ward, I thought briefly, corner swagger. That's
Yes.
where I would go.
Yes.
Corner swagger on full display. But, I don't want to act like just cocky as hell and that's it. I thought great perspective on, frankly, a journey that unfortunately is a Hollywood script because there are some highs and there are some really tragic moments off the field as a father. But just your overall impressions of the new Colts cornerback.
He kind of reminded me, at least personality-wise and story-wise and journey-wise, to Grant Stewart. Got it out the mud. Took the long way to get to where he's going, undrafted, went through some personal tragedies, and is still fighting and still has this huge chip, to use the cliche.
Undrafted free agent.
I mean,
Yeah.
he carries it well. And I think that, when he was speaking, he kind of commands a room. I could totally see this guy being in a meeting room, and when he speaks, everyone listens. And the conviction in which he spoke, and also, having his family there. I know a few of his family members and close friends were with him and came with him on that trip, and you could just see the gratitude on his face. I asked him, what about your journey, man? Like, you went to community college, you went to Middle Tennessee, undrafted, and then you look up, 5-6 years later, and you're signing a $60 million contract. So there was a lot of gratitude there as well.
So his daughter passed away at the age of 1 last year in season.
In October.
I don't know if I need to say any more on that, just what that would do to you. He missed, I think it was 3 games, I believe, because of that. And really, he made it clear yesterday, and I'm speaking for him here, I can't go back to San Francisco. It's just too much.
Yeah, he said that a few times.
And was very direct in that. Memphis, is that home for him? Is that right? Or
I'm
Texas?
not sure. I want to say he's a Southern guy.
I want to say the baby
it's
might have been
Mississippi.
born in
actually.
Mississippi.
It is because
I think the baby was born in Memphis, maybe, and then they reside in Texas. It was something in that general geographic region. So, he is now here in Indy. I thought a couple other things that stood out to me. I mentioned this in the opening hour. Speaking of that general area of the country, he said that the New Orleans Saints, he was on with John yesterday afternoon. Great listen. Hopefully you don't go back and listen to it till 10 a.m. But one of the things that I was struck by was he said the New Orleans Saints, he thought is where he was going. And then the Colts came in at the last minute and upped their ante That is a direct Chris Ballard in January. I need to do a better job at finishing these deals. When we've identified free agents, we've got to cross the goal line, to use a football phrase. Well, the Colts did that with a guy in Ward that you would think he would probably have some ties to New Orleans, just given, the geographic element to it. So that stood out to me. And then just his overall, again, cornerback swagger. He said that Lou Anarumo has expressed to him very open about possibly following some wideouts around. Mark, go ahead and cue up that clip just on his general play style. James, I think you might have thrown this question at him.
Yeah.
And Javarius Ward certainly did not miss a chance to hit it out of the ballpark.
You mentioned, you respect your game. Do you have a sense for kind of like why they were so Indy, why they felt like you were like a good fit here?
Because I'm a great player. I would assume that's why. Yeah.
I mean, can you break down why you're a great player?
I can press, I can tackle, I can play off, I can try with the best receivers. I feel like I can do it all as a corner. My game is versatile, and I just feel like I'm a CB1, a great cornerback.
As
Dog.
he should.
Sounds like a dog.
I
And
need
you
that.
you obviously got to have that when you're out on an island. And I'll be curious how much they do the travel thing. I'm not asking that to be 17 weeks out of the season, but I think that's been a missing element for the Colts defense in past years. They haven't trusted, frankly, any of their corners to do that, or trusted themselves.
I mean, the last one you would think of is Gilly, Stephon Gilmore.
Right. So
yeah,
you look at the wideouts on the schedule next year. Again, Nico Collins twice, Puka Nacua, Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf. Some of these guys that you do play, there might come a time in the game where that dude's cooking, or from the start of the game, where you choose to do that. So I was very impressed by just everything associated with Javarius Ward yesterday.
And the other thing, when you look at this offseason flurry of moves on defense, all the way from Anarumo coming in to be the defensive coordinator to all these signings that help your defense, this should indirectly help the offense too, because they just couldn't get off the field last year. And that gets tough. You end up playing catch up all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at some point you got to get the stops. They were, one of the worst teams when it came to giving up big plays on third down, explosive plays to keep drives alive. And it sounds like Javarius Ward has no interest in playing more snaps than he needs to. He mentioned, I played a ton of snaps in my career, I have a ton of experience, but like most defensive players, I want to get out the field. I don't want to be out there for 65, 70 plays because we can't get the money downs done. And so I'm excited to see, like I said earlier, not only what he does as an individual in this defense, but how he elevates the rest of the group to be playing at a higher level.
James, cap space wise, the Colts still, I think, I don't know, I'd have to look back at my math, but I feel like around 15 to 20 million in cap space. I go to defensive end, I go to offensive line. Anything else that you point to? I could see linebacker and tight end, but again, I've certainly positioned tight end more as a draft need. You going anywhere? D-end, O-line, linebacker, tight end, anything else?
I would say linebacker is probably a sneaky one, but to your point, at this point, I think you're just smart to add depth, especially along that defensive line. Probably D-end, just because you lost. You lost a few. You're depending on Samson Ebukam to come back from torn Achilles. That's not a guarantee. Dayo Dangbo is now in Chicago. Mark is very happy about that. And you have to make sure that you replenish, your reserves a bit. I'm not saying you're going to go out and get Dayo Dangbo at this point in free agency, but again, you need someone. You can't just go into the season, obviously, with a handful of defensive ends and say, we're ready to go. And we know how Chris Ballard feels about the trenches in general. And so I would expect over the next few days, maybe not, again, a headlining move, but more of like the, Gallimore signings where you're signing a veteran defensive tackle that's been around, or you're signing a veteran, D lineman, offensive lineman, whatever the case may be, someone who has some experience. It could help you when you're in a pinch.
You guys comfortable with the offensive line at the moment? Because like at least 2 of the 5 positions are going to be brand new.
You got to get one more.
Yeah,
I honestly think that they potentially could draft an offensive lineman in the first round. And I'm not saying you do it at 14. Do you trade back? We'll see, but I think that's a need that could be addressed a lot higher in the draft than maybe some people will give it credit for.
A potential starter at guard and a swing tackle.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I view O-line. Still the rest of the offseason. And, go back to the combine, James. What does Chris Ballard like about this year's draft class?
Oh, I love this question because he answers it, honestly, every year.
He liked the O-line in the middle rounds. Yep. So could we get a little bit of what we got? I'm not saying you need to go Gonzalez, Bortolini like you did last year, 3rd and 4th. But it sounds like don't be surprised if the Colts do that coming up.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they
in a little over a month.
Yeah. And in years past, you and I have talked about this. If you listen carefully to what Chris Ballard says in the days and weeks and months leading up to a draft, there's generally at the end a lot of truth in what he said. You may not get the direct thing, but you look back on it and go, oh, yeah, he said that, and this is where they're at.
Yeah, honestly, if you go back and look at pretty much every transcript, at least since I've been on the beat for Chris Ballard and his comments, there's always little nuggets there that you may not be able to, enjoy in the moment. Shout out to Dino Nuggets. However, when you
You're
look
gonna have
back
an
at
endorsement
it,
with them
I
by
mean,
about Tuesday.
at this point, I am a proud, a willing sponsor for Dino Nuggets. But I do think that, to Jeff's point, there are certain things you can look back on and say, you know what, he kept his word. In this case, it's not so much as keeping his word; it's changing his word and then keeping it and just acting like a totally different Chris Ballard, because we haven't seen this guy operate in this manner throughout his 9-year tenure, or at least the last few years for sure, where he's made the big signings and he's made some significant changes to his philosophy and perhaps his team building approach. And so we'll see what the payoffs will be months from now, but I think the genesis of this is pretty good.
6 free agent signings. That's the most since year 1 of Chris Ballard, when, again, he crumbled up and ripped up a lot of Ryan Grigson's previous roster. Coming up in about 20, we'll get some bracketology chatter. Isaac Trotter from 247 Sports here. Greg Rakestraw thinks IU is in. Joe Lenardi currently has Indiana. I thought I saw he updated it this morning. I thought he said the second team out. So he has teams like North Carolina, who won yesterday, as in. Texas, who won yesterday, as in. Xavier, who lost yesterday, he still has them in. And he moved Boise State above Indiana. Boise is still alive in the Mountain West tournament. So, again, I don't want to act like Lenardi is gospel, but for the most part, when Selection Sunday rolls around, he's usually like 67 of 68, and then he'll have, the second team out will have gotten in, something along those lines here. So I bring all that up to say, you want Duke to beat North Carolina today, you want Texas to lose in the SEC tournament, but if you base that off of Lenardi, he's already got those teams above Indiana. So the big teams to watch would be, you don't want Colorado State to win in the Mountain West tournament. You don't want Dayton to win in the A-10 tournament, because they are just behind Indiana, according to him. And if they continue to win, they either could get the automatic bid in their conference tournaments, or at the very least, they could get some nice neutral court action to their resume.
I'm curious why Lunardi likes North Carolina over Indiana, even without a win against Duke tonight. They've got a great strength of schedule, non-conference. They played big teams outside, but they didn't beat anybody. They were 1-11 in quad 1 games, and they had a quad 3 loss.
I think they're 20 spots ahead of Indiana in the net.
It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, I think what Indiana did in the non-conference is Mike Woodson said, I'm on the hot seat, I need wins. And I'm not going to challenge us in the non-conference. And you know what? Mike Woodson had challenged Indiana in the non-conference in previous years. Remember when they played Auburn?
Mm-hmm.
Or they played Kansas? Or they played Arizona? They said, hey, we'll put all our eggs in the Bahamas basket. Bahamas are bust. Well, what happened? Louisville undressed them. Gonzaga undressed them. And Providence turned out to be not any good.
Yeah.
So when that's your non-conference, you're going to get looked at a little bit differently.
I get it.
So I think that is an important piece to the puzzle.
But they are 4-12 in quad 1 games. Carolina's 1-11 in quad 1
Again,
games.
these are all parts of the metric. And I know the net is an indicator of, how much do you beat some of these teams by.
Yeah, that's true too.
And so that's why I think you see North Carolina, again, 20 spots ahead of where Indiana is net-wise, or 19 spots ahead of where Indiana is.
Yeah, I thought for a second there, KB, you're like, you want to root against Joe Lenardi is where I thought you were going for a second, because you were going down a list of teams that IU fans should be rooting against. And
You do want to root against Joe Lenardi,
to a certain extent. I'm like, do you just spread some of the hate, to him as well? But again, I think it goes back to, they had a great opportunity the other day against Oregon. And, Jeff, you were there for certain stretches. And it wasn't just this game. It's kind of been this season. IU will look really good for 8 minutes, and then they'll have these 3 or 4 minute droughts where you're just like, what are you doing?
That's what killed them yesterday.
Exactly. And like, can you do anything to just stop the bleeding? And then oftentimes it's like, yesterday I thought they kind of got out their system early and got back in the game. I was like, okay, like it's over. And then it happened again. And I'm like, to have that moment in that magnitude of a game to score a season low in points, like that's tough. It's hard to feel sorry for you in that instance.
Yeah. It's also tough for Indiana fans, I think, to swallow too. They don't want Indiana should not be on the bubble. Is really, I think, where fans come
that's
from.
Real.
That's
real.
the
They just shouldn't be on the bubble. They should be.
statement you can make. 68 of these teams get in the tournament.
But you look at the Big Ten, and just for example, I've got the Athletic pulled up, and their bracketologist is saying locks: Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Oregon, Purdue, UCLA, Wisconsin. Indiana fans are like, Indiana should be on that list.
Well, look at yesterday. You're facing Oregon. Oregon's a 5 seed. Why are the teams 8, 9 in the Big Ten next to each other? One's a 5 and one's on the bubble.
Yeah.
Again, non-conference schedule and some of the quality wins within the Big Ten. When I look back on this bless you, Mark. I look back on this Indiana season. I feel like my lone memory of the Indiana season will be Trey Galloway coming around a ball screen and him throwing one up in the air and me thinking to myself, is that a floater or is that a lob? Like, that's the only everything in Indiana in the half court, I'm like, all right, here comes the Galloway. He's gonna heave it up in the air. Do you think it's a floater? Do you think it's a lob? Is Ballo gonna grab it? Is Ballo not gonna grab it? Is the floater gonna go in? Is the floater not gonna I feel like that is just the summary. If I have one image of the Indiana season this year, it'll be that.
I think what Indiana should have been all year long were those last 6 minutes of the game against Ohio State, where they're coming off screens and they're hitting big shots and they're working the ball around and they're getting defensive stops. That's what I think most people thought this year was going to be like.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you just made. And I know Luke Goody, as of late, hasn't really shot the ball very well. You would like to see more from him.
He was the 0 for yesterday.
I was going to say.
It was tough.
I saw him on the floor, so I know he played, but I didn't see a lot of impact.
And your portal guys. Goody's obviously one of them, but Rice and Carlisle are 0 for 7. Ballo doesn't score in the second half. It's just, you just can't have that in a must-have game when Oregon's 9 a.m. local time and you've got, as huge of a neutral court advantage as you're going to get. More on the bracketology front from one of the experts, Isaac Trotter, going to join us here coming up in 10. Mark Dykton, cue us up. A lot of Indiana right there, so let's go with the team locally that's still left in the Big Ten tournament. That would be the Boilermakers of Purdue. 76-71, they pull away from USC late. Trey Kaufman-Renn with an all-Big Ten type of effort. 30 points. Credit to Matt Painter for putting him back on the floor with 2 fouls. I thought that was key. And Miles Colvin and Cam Heide, they have had struggling stretches at different parts of this season. They combine for 17 points, 16 rebounds. James, I thought against a pretty athletic USC team, I thought Colvin and Heide were extra important. Purdue went with those two. With their big 3, not a lot of Caleb First, not a lot of even C.J. Cox, Ja'Kari Harris. I thought Heide and Colvin were very good.
Heide came up clutch with the swipe steal at the end to kind of seal the game. So, again, it's the little things like that that'll help Purdue get over the top because their margin for error this year compared to last year without Zach Edey, obviously, is a lot smaller.
Love the fact that their most important players stepped up at the most important time last night, Kevin. Middle of that second half, game's on the line, and it was Braden Smith. It was Trey Kaufman-Renn. It was Fletcher Lawyer had some nice plays as well, and Heide just came up big. I like the fact that the guys they need to produce came through in the clutch last night.
11 boards for Cam Heide.
First win away from Mackey since February 4th. For the Boilers, they'll get Dusty May tonight, 9 o'clock, and they are favored. They'll be the road team in the uniform, so they're favored by 3.5 tonight. Again, Indiana loses yesterday in a performance I feel like I've seen far too often in the Mike Woodson era. They shoot 35% from the floor, 25% from 3, and 50% from the foul line. Anthony Leal missed some big front ends of 1-and-1s there late in that one. And, Jeff, that was a season-low 59 points for the Hoosiers.
It was hard to watch. It was just one of those games that was hard to watch. And you kept thinking, they're going to get a spurt here, right? They're going to get on a 3 or 4 minute run. But it was Oregon that had the 3 and 4 minute runs, won a 10-0 run at the end of the first half and a 9-0 run in the second half. You're not going to win. If you're not scoring and shooting and you're giving up those kinds of runs, forget it.
Oregon, Michigan State at noon. Coming up at 2:30, UCLA, Wisconsin. James is fighting Illini, taking on Maryland at 6:30, and then again, Purdue and Michigan, the nightcap over at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. Speaking of the team that usually occupies that building out in Philly tonight, Mark, you said the Delaware, not Mud Hens.
Bluecoats.
Bluecoats, thank you. Is that a Revolutionary War thing?
Sure sounds like it.
Gosh, I feel like Washington's crossing the Potomac or something here.
7 years ago.
Different president, but that's okay.
That was an excellent
you.
throwback there by Mark Dykton. Philadelphia's really banged up. 10 dudes in the injury report. The Pacers have none. That's why they're a double-digit road favorite. James Boyd, and then all eyes to tomorrow night, the rematch with Milwaukee. How do you think Giannis responds after the goose egg fourth quarter the other night?
Well, I certainly think he'll shoot the ball in the fourth quarter a lot more than he did, save for that one heave at the end. And I think it's a test, again, for the Pacers to kind of show who they want to be and who they really are, because we know, you beat a good team one time, okay. To beat them again, that kind of shows who you are and truly, if you're the better team. And then lastly, standings matter, man. Tiebreakers matter. You win this game, it could be huge for your playoff implications.
I believe it's just that. Pacers win, they have the head-to-head tiebreaker on Milwaukee. I think it goes to divisional record is the next, because they'll split the season series. If Milwaukee wins, they will have won the season series 3-1. So that is what is up for grabs. The Bucks did win last night over the Lakers in convincing fashion.
Just take care of business first. Just worry about Milwaukee tomorrow. Just go in and win a game that you're supposed to win. That's been the undoing of so many NBA teams over the years. Just go take care of tonight's game.
Yeah, and a healthy Tyrese Halliburton, that should help. He's on an injury report. We'll see if he can play a little bit better than he did. I know he hit the crazy shot over Giannis, but I thought he wasn't really fully what I believe to be an all-NBA caliber Tyrese Halliburton. And wouldn't this be kind of weird, KB, where he doesn't make the All-Star team, but he makes All-NBA? I think he's in the running for third team or potentially second team All-NBA.
Can I amend the Scotty Pop quiz?
Ooh,
I don't know. Get
editorial decision here.
The pop quiz today, I think, should be, is this player on the 76ers or did you graduate with this person?
Do we have odds on if the 76ers actually played their G League counterpart? Who would win? Or is it just too many of the same players?
That's an even
Sadly,
better
I feel
question.
They'll
like
have to
it would
decide
be-
who plays for who at this point.
It'd be a hell of a game. All right, on the other side, the bracket talk. Isaac Trotter, where does he have Indiana? What does he like on the resume? What does he not like on the resume? What are IU fans rooting for and against today? We'll break it all down with him coming up next. Fan Morning Show, 93.5 on 107.5 The Fan.
Welcome back to the Fan Morning Show. Of course, I'm James Boyd, joined by the handsome and winning Mark Dykton. I know.
Look at the brownie points.
I know. There you go.
The
There you
nicest
go.
thing anyone's ever said to Mark.
Handsome, and he's got cookies.
There you go.
You're gonna call him Marky next?
I don't know
like
about
Jeff called
Marky
me
or
Kevin?
Kevy, but
You keep giving those compliments.
yeah,
Call me whoever you want.
we got Kevin, not Kevy Bowen, and also Jeff Rickard here, and on our Payless
we didn't
Liquors.
get those compliments, man.
I mean,
That
look,
was a compliment,
I gotta
Kev.
sprinkle them out, man. I just can't give it all away at once, man. You gotta play the game a little bit. But another one of my good friends actually we have on the Payless Liquors hotline here, Isaac Trotter from 24/7 Sports, as well as CBS Sports, to talk to us about a little bracketology, IU, Purdue. And Isaac, I'll start with this. One, how are you doing? And two, when's the last time you played pickup basketball and put your shoulder through somebody's chest like you did me in college?
I mean, I think that's kind of like my go-to move every time because I just don't have a bag at this point. So probably earlier this week, unfortunately. That's just kind of how it goes. But, no, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Well, obviously here in Indianapolis, in Indiana, general as a state, a lot of the talk is about IU, Mike Woodson, his program. Are they in or out? And when you give that answer, why or why not?
I think they're in, but my God, it's going to be really, really close.
Oof.
This is coming down to the absolute wire. And I kind of think it's going to be between North Carolina and Indiana. And that's a crazy thing to say just because it's like two of the bigger brands in college basketball. And just from a resume perspective, I think Indiana probably has the edge over – if I was filling out for myself, I think I would put Indiana in over North Carolina. One, because they have 4 quadrant one wins. Carolina has just 1. 2, Indiana doesn't have a single loss in the quad 3 or quad 4 category. Like that's a pretty impressive feat. And if you kind of look back at history, there's only been one team that did not make the NCAA tournament when they went through a season and didn't have a quad 3 or quad 4 loss. That was last year with Oklahoma. And that was in a year when there were bid stealers galore. Like NC State came out of nowhere and got a bid. New Mexico, or we saw the Mountain West stole a bid. The A-10 stole a bid. So assuming that doesn't happen here down the stretch, I think Indiana gets in. But man, it's going to be a little bit hairy down here in the last 48 hours.
Yeah, this is Jeff Rickard talking to you right now. I agree with everything you just said. Having said that, is there a scenario left where both Indiana and Carolina get in?
I think so. I think if you're watching the ACC tournament today, like, all right, let's just play the game, right? Duke doesn't have Cooper Flagg. They're the most vulnerable that they've ever been, right? Malik Brown is also going to be out with a shoulder injury. Say Carolina wins today and then they win again tomorrow and get that automatic qualifier. You could see a scenario where Xavier's knocked out, and then you're kind of looking at the Mountain West and being like, all right, let's hope for one of the locks there to win it, whether that's a New Mexico or a Utah State. If those two teams are both in the semifinals, if one of those teams can end up winning the league and taking the automatic bid, then you're probably knocking out one of those extra Mountain West teams that could steal a bid. It makes sense. And the other factor that I'm also looking at is the A-10, because that league has been begging for a bid stealer. And so I would be watching that one super closely today. St. Joe's, if you watch the NBA or like following the NBA draft, like they have an absolute superstar, Rasheer Fleming, who's on a ton of NBA draft boards. That team's super talented, but their resume stinks. Like if they could find a way to get hot here in the A-10 tournament and steal a bid, which they're more than capable of doing, that could be a scenario where Indiana or North Carolina is out. But if VCU wins the A-10 tournament, I think there's room for both.
Isaac, Kevin Bowen here. Great stuff. Really appreciate you making time for us here on this Friday morning. I feel like it's a CVS receipt, though, of who Indiana needs to root against here that you've kind of laid out for us. Root against North Carolina. Root for VCU in the A-10. Root for Memphis in the American. Root for New Mexico and Utah State in the Mountain West. I'm sure there's others. Let's go back to kind of the start of the conversation, though. What do you like about the Indiana resume, and what do you not like about the Indiana resume?
That's a great question. I think the thing that with Indiana's resume that they're lacking is they just don't have that non-conference, splashy win, right? Like, what's your best non-conference win? Is it Providence on a neutral floor, who was an absolute disaster this year? Like that's kind of like the problem that you're kind of running into. Now, granted, they did test themselves, but there's nothing really great there in non-conference play that you can really hang your hat on. Even South Carolina at home, like that was an NCAA tournament team last year, but They had one of the lowest NIL budgets in all of college basketball this year, and they were the second worst team in the SEC. So it's just like there's nothing really tangible and moldable there. Now, on the other end of that, they don't have any bad losses, like I brought up earlier. So it's hard to like knock them because like they did play a tough schedule. And they don't have anything, horrifically like this huge black eye on this schedule. And, I'm just fascinated just to see if they get in, like what type of team, like does the committee like look at this team a little bit differently since all of the changes that they've made? Like this is a completely different team than they were in the middle of, January when they were losing. It felt like how many games did they lose? Like they went 1-6 in a stretch there in the middle of January. Like this is a completely different team. I wonder if the committee kind of judges them based on how they finished compared to what they were in the earlier parts of Big Ten play.
From 24/7 Sports, Isaac Trotter does great work here covering college basketball with us on the Payless Liquors hotline. The ceiling seed-wise for Purdue is what? Right now I feel like they're kind of in that 4-5 range you see on a lot of brackets. Their path to a Big Ten title would be filled with quad one wins on neutral floors. Again, they get Michigan here coming up tonight. What do you think the ceiling is, and I guess floor as well for Purdue seed-wise?
Yeah, I think they actually can get to a 3. It's kind of that weird kind of conversation about like how much do these last few games matter when, you'll talk to some bracketologists and they'll be like, well, the committee fills out this field tonight on a Friday night, and it really doesn't matter what you do on Saturday and Sunday in the conference tournament. But I think there is some upward mobility with them just because like they could theoretically, kind of play into their own hands. Like they could see Maryland, who's a little bit ahead of them in the pecking order for a 4 seed. They could potentially see Wisconsin again, who's a little bit ahead of them in the pecking seed. So you could potentially see them kind of win those head-to-head matchups, which would give them the edge. But I'm with you. I think this is a group that just they look, they smell, they breathe like a 4. Like that's what they look like to me. And we'll see what that means. I think. I have some concerns about Purdue long-term just because it feels like, Braden Smith and Trey Coffin-Wren have to do everything on every single offensive possession, whether that's create the shot, finish the shot. Like it's a lot. It's a heavy load. Those two guys have been terrific all year long. How much more do they have left in the tank? Because they have just been like absolute workhorses all season, and it feels like Purdue needs even more of them here down the stretch.
I'll follow up there, Isaac. When you're talking about Braden Smith, this is the Big Ten Player of the Year. Where have you seen him grown the most from last year to this year, besides just losing Zach Edey in the middle, obviously?
Yeah, isn't it funny? Like the whole conversation around Braden Smith is like there were real people out there that thought that he was a Zach Edey merchant that was like getting this huge benefit of a doubt because he got to play with Zach Edey. Like somehow that conversation has not aged very well for them because he is truly one of the elite pick and roll maestros in college basketball. I was kind of going through all of his tape, and it's like, well, he beats drop coverage at a really high level. He beats it when you blitz the ball screen at a really high level. When you hard hedge it, he's destroying it. When it's like every different pick and roll coverage, he is just absolutely destroying this year. It feels like he's almost kind of mastered the point guard position. And, he, for me, is the best initiator point guard in college basketball. The pull-up jumper this year has been terrific. I think he's done an even better job of ramping up his three-point rate. You just can't go under on him now. And that was the main scouting report on him for a little bit, and you just cannot do that. He is making you pay. And he is just a terrific, phenomenal player. Now, I will say this, I would love to see a little bit more from him with his on-ball defense, but even that, his secondary defense, his off-ball defense has been terrific. He's like a free safety out there just reading passing lanes and getting out and going. And I don't know what his wingspan is, but it's got to be like +6, right? Like he uses it to his advantage defensively.
I think it's really, really well said. Isaac Trotter, 24/7 Sports, again, cover of college basketball. Isaac, last one from me. The James Boyd scouting report on the floor. I've seen this man shoot in our basement. The jumper got a little flat with kind of our low roof downstairs. If you're playing James one-on-one, you forcing him left, what are you doing?
Well, you're just hoping and praying that the pull-up jumpers aren't going in at this point. You're just trying to stay in front and have a good contest and not foul. But because he's so slippery and the spin moves, he just.
Am I hearing a Derrick Rose comp here?
It's tough. It's tough.
Modern day Derrick Rose.
I mean, I ain't dunking, but I got the right and the left finish around the basket.
Is it the healthy Derrick Rose or the gimpy Derrick Rose?
Oh, here we go. You can't say that, man. I'm from the Chicago area. We love it. I will fight you about Derrick Rose here on this Friday morning, Jeff.
I love Derrick Rose, and the Bulls did him dirty.
Isaac, thank you so much, man. Terrific stuff. I know it's a super busy time for you, so we appreciate you. Explain a little bit more on Indiana and Purdue's front here as we wait Selection Sunday coming up at 6 o'clock.
Of course, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Isaac Trotter right there, Payless Liquors hotline. I did think he made a great point about Purdue and just the margin for error. You know, I was reminded when Kaufman-Renn went to the bench last night, man, it's just so thin for Purdue. Like, I think they're a good team, and I think they could very well be a second weekend team. But, like, you can't have Braden in foul trouble. You can't have Trey Kaufman-Renn in foul trouble. And, again, a credit to Matt Painter. He went back to them. And maybe you hate on USC a little bit there for, you know, not picking up that third foul. They don't really have a traditional back-to-the-basket guy, but Purdue's draw will be interesting to watch. And they seemingly every game call Trey Kaufman-Renn for the early moving screen. And that'll be something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, I always get a little frustrated because Trey Kaufman-Renn and Caleb First get called for one or two cheap fouls
I thought last
every
night was
game.
cheap.
Yes.
I thought Purdue got a good whistle in the final 30 seconds. I did not think the Kaufman-Renn. I think it was his first one. I thought that was kind of a weak call.
I'm just hoping, you know, like with most basketball fans, the players get to decide these games as we get to, you know, bigger moments where, I mean, that moment last night, even though, you know, I'm watching and obviously the Purdue angle is cool and seeing them win is fun, that call on the inbound pass, I was like, no one in America is calling that in a pickup game.
So soft.
And so, and I had a few Purdue fans I saw on social media saying the same thing, like, well, we'll take it, but dang. And so, again, reminder to the officials out there, and I think this is a universal conversation when it comes to Big Ten refs, is like, don't let a guy get clobbered and you call nothing and then you call that at the end of the game.
I would agree. All right, the pop quiz officially here for the week to end the week comes your way next. On the line, not just the Jiffy Lube oil change. Is there anything more going on? Do we have tickets to give away or not? Are we out of tickets right now, Mark?
It's just the oil
I'm
change.
asking.
You really pumped that up for not much payoff.
Well, you get a free oil change.
That's
I
right.
got one at Jiffy Lube yesterday, as a matter of fact.
There you go.
You get to hear Mark's voice when you call in.
Yeah,
that's right.
The dulcet tones.
We'll do it next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
If you want a free Jiffy Lube oil change, give us a call. See if we can get you on for the pop quiz. 317-239-1070 for that. James Boyd, you just tried to throw a little extra pop quiz question in at us?
You did.
Not really, but I was looking at this stat from StatMuse on Twitter, and it has Halliburton split since the trade deadline. He's averaging 21 points, 11 assists, and he's shooting 53, 48, 100 from the 3 different shooting categories. So 100% from the free throw line.
Man.
He's got a 7.4 assist to turnover ratio.
That's the wildest one.
Since
that assist to turnover ratio is just stupid good.
He's special, man. He is one of the best point guards in the league, and honestly fits like that old school true point guard vibe that we don't necessarily get in today's game.
Double-digit road favorite tonight, the Pacers in Philly, off to Milwaukee tomorrow. If I had to pin you guys for your favorite Big Ten quarterfinal game today, what would you say? Oregon, Michigan State leads us off. UCLA, Wisconsin at 2:30. Maryland, Illinois at 6:30. Purdue, Michigan.
Maryland, Illinois.
I
honestly think that
James Boyd.
That's probably my pick as well. I'll take the homer route on that one.
Oh gosh, man!
I hope Purdue really gets it together
You're really
here.
sucking up to the boss today.
I hope that I hope Purdue gets it together. But that game to me going into this tournament felt like if it took place, and it is, would be kind of the de facto championship game. That's just me.
I might go UCLA, Wisconsin.
Yeah, I was gonna say I might make an amendment. The Ducks are rolling right now.
8 in a row.
Yeah,
right for
so
Oregon?
I'm very intrigued by that game in Michigan State because Michigan State obviously number 1 seed in the Big Ten tournament, and I'm just curious about it, man, because this is when Tom Izzo's teams are at their best, but the Ducks are playing so well.
Mark Dykton, why don't you give us a little number here for the pop quiz?
Well, let's make it official real quick.
Mark, just throw someone on air for us here. We're going to have to make this somewhat quick.
How many beers did I have last night with my parents? That was 2, so that goes to Adam.
Gosh, how great would that have been if he just said 9. Hey, Adam.
I wouldn't be here if that was the case.
Adam?
Yes, sir.
Congrats on calling in. You got some fandom here in college basketball? You got rooting interest for any team?
I root for Indiana teams, but I will go with, whoever I end up picking in the bracket, try to win some money.
Notre Dame women, a lock, of course. Purdue men, of course, a lock. We'll see about the Ball State women. They're actually about ready to tip. They're in the semifinal of the MAC tournament. And then, of course, we'll see about the IU men and IU women, I think, on the right side of the bubble. Adam, good luck. Jeff Rickard, you want to throw number 1 his way?
All right, let's go, Adam. The Big Ten men's basketball tournament continues today over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. IU eliminated by Oregon yesterday. Hoosiers have never won the Big Ten tournament since its inception in 1998. They have reached the championship game just once over the 28-year history of the tournament. Who is the only coach to lead IU to the championship game of that Big Ten basketball tournament? Is it Bob Knight, Mike Davis, Kelvin Sampson, or Tom Crean?
Oh, this is going to be embarrassing, but I'm going to go Bob Knight at the end, maybe.
Purdue is shooting for its 3rd Big Ten tournament title after winning a struggle with USC last night. Purdue would tie 3 schools with 3 tournament championships. Should the Boilers run the table, which of the following schools does not currently have 3 Big Ten tournament championships? Is it Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, or Iowa? Think of where I'm from.
Well, I have no idea, but I'm going to go with Illinois.
There we go. Okay. Good answer.
Adam will amend the pop quiz. It'll be a 3-questioner for you here on this Friday. The final question today is the 27th anniversary of Bryce Drew's Pacer buzzer beater. Was it Jamie Sykes, the inbounder, Scotty? The MLB prospect? An unbelievable pass there. That gave the number 13 Valpo an upset win in the 98 NCAA men's basketball tournament. Adam, who did Valpo beat in that game? New Mexico, Michigan State, Maryland, or Ole Miss?
Oh, Lord. I was hoping you were going to ask me which team he was on. I have no idea. I'll go Ole Miss just to try to get lucky.
This. Guesses from outer space by Adam. 2 and 3. Correct. Number 1, though, Jeff Rickard. He went Robert Montgomery.
Yeah, it was Mike Davis. He lost to Steve Alford, Luke Recker, and the Iowa Hawkeyes 63-61 back in 2001.
Scotty, the first Big Ten tournament's the only time we've had IU and Purdue face off, correct? First ever Big Ten tournament. I think that was, 98, 90? Yeah.
Well, good news, though. It's Friday. You get the Jiffy Lube prize pack. How about that?
Talk to Mark.
Mark is there. That's how that worked.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm going to take his info in a minute when we get off the air.
There you go.
All right. I like that. Guys, great week. We look forward to more great college basketball coming up over the next couple of days, and you'll hear about it all right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Stay with us. We got Jake coming your way at noon, JMV from 3 o'clock to 6, and the Pacers and Sixers later on tonight.